welcome to this week's Off-World Off Topic. That was almost like a news broadcast.
Yeah, we need to...
Welcome to the BBC.
Yeah. Yes, hello.
Yes, I'm Mark Fox Powell, and this is Sam Paler.
Hello.
And Off-World Off Topic is Off-World Empire's sort of weekly show.
Sort of weekly, yeah. We're trying to develop, but there's another... Maybe we shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't until we've actually
Until
decided
we've worked out.
what's
We're trying
going
to work out another little video thing, and it's taking some time. So,
Yeah.
but we will...
plans in the pipeline.
Yeah, for a few things. But...
So today...
we want to talk about... today we want to talk about some
well,
slightly bizarre stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so in the last episode, I think we started talking about it a bit, mentioning it, referring to it a bit. And
Wait, it wasn't last episode.
Was it not?
I think it was this episode before that.
Oh, it was the episode before.
Because we said last episode we were going to do an episode about the future of warfare.
Yeah.
And then we did an episode about the Tesla master plan.
Yeah, because it came out and it was worth chatting about. Yeah, of course. But yeah, so we alluded to the previous week that we were going to talk about the future of war. Sort of threatened that was going to happen. So it's going to happen.
We're going to talk about it.
It's interesting. There's a lot to chew over.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's
should be fun.
A big thing in the world, isn't it? War.
Yeah, it has been forever. So.
And will change quite dramatically probably in the future, and will have lots of impacts on various other industries and public life and things. So it's actually, I think it's a really interesting topic.
Is really interesting. It's really interesting. It's there are tons of sort of technological aspects to it, and also like philosophical and like societal implications going forward and all that stuff.
Yeah, lots of moral conundrums.
Yeah, there's plenty of them.
There is a bit of morbid sort of curiosity about it as well. A bit kind of like... It's a bit sort of scary and dark, and it's kind of interesting for that reason.
Yeah, I agree.
But first, we did want to talk about something about, well, actually a couple of things that are sort of related to Tesla again, or at least to, well, one of them is very much related to Tesla, and the other one's related to electric stuff. In general,
tangentially,
yeah. So Tesla did their unveiling of the Gigafactory. Now, we hadn't seen this, or it wasn't out when we filmed the master plan episode.
That's right,
so there was some new information we got on a couple of bits, mostly about the factory itself. We couldn't get out of the master plan, but while Elon Musk was talking, they gave some more details on basically the factory as a product.
Which is something that they put in the master plan, focusing the design and engineering more on the machines that build the machines.
Yes.
Turning the factory itself into a product. And that's a bit unclear, like exactly what that meant.
Yeah.
So we kind of tried to work it out and talk about it a bit on our previous episode. But they went in this so basically it was almost like a product launch type event. It was like an opening of the Gigafactory. I don't really know if that means that were they not producing batteries before and now they are? After this event, or is it just a symbolic sort of PR?
Yeah, I think it was a symbolic thing. I think they had started producing stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, they are producing.
Yeah. And the factory itself is only at like 14% completion.
Yeah, it's tiny. Yeah.
I mean, it's already pretty big, but it's
tiny compared to how
massive it's going to be when it's finished.
Yes.
But yeah, so they spent a good chunk of this little talk explaining this concept of the factory as the product. And it's basically just, so we were thinking of it as like a product that you sell, and maybe ultimately it could be something like that, but I think really what they mean is that they've basically gone back to basics and just like designed the whole process of manufacturing up from the ground up, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So instead of just building a big old warehouse and buying some machines from different people and just putting them in there and making cars.
That's exactly it, yeah.
They actually start with what is the most efficient way we can do everything and pack everything in and organise the factory so that everything's in exactly where it should be and the optimum layout of everything. And
so I think they said in the master plan, did they say in the master plan where they said basically give it as much attention as a product, or was that just us saying that last time? Basically, that's what...
Yeah, that is basically what they meant.
That's what they meant, is that you have you imagine the way you design the car, they were saying, so that the Tesla car, you think extremely carefully about where you put space in there for certain things, how you arrange everything. In a factory, normally, they were suggesting that doesn't happen in the same way.
Yeah.
And that you buy things from a catalogue of different items and then sort of try and pack them into the factory.
Yeah.
Whereas here they're doing like ground up a big CAD design of the entire thing as if it is like an engine, and there are like compartments for different things, and it's very... They think they're going to... What did you say how much? It was like they think they might do a 5 to 10 times Was that it? A 5 to 10 times improvement
that
in space
usage. Yeah,
space usage of the factory. So they're going to be able to cram a hell of a lot more like machinery and basically therefore produce things faster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that translates to a 5 to 10 times, tenfold increase on battery production for like a given volume of factory.
Sure.
Roughly, I imagine it probably does.
You'd imagine so.
So, I mean, and they were obviously pretty excited about this whole concept of like,
they were.
Of like a sort of re-engineering manufacturing. That's the way that they were kind of framing it.
As he always says, as Elon Musk always says, taking a first physics approach.
Yeah. I don't really get what you mean.
Well, it's stripping it down to its basic components, isn't it? The basic, like, he just means the underlying, like, kind of equations of it. The get to the nub of it and then redesign from that point up with those assumptions you make from basic physics principles. As
to me, physics first principles means like thermodynamics.
Yes, well.
So like.
Yeah, but he means philosophically.
I get what he means. Yeah, I get what he means. Yeah.
So,
taking everything back to basically just the maths.
Yeah, not making any, not so much looking at previous design and going, oh, this is how they've done it. We'll just do it that way. Just going back to the very much the basic. This is what we need, and this is what we can put into it. What's the best way to do this from that point? Go right back to the start. So I don't know. Maybe it will result in some great way that factories will be designed like that in the future. I really don't know anything about manufacturing.
Yeah, same.
So I have no idea as to how valid their claims are. That these. I don't know if other factories in the world have these types of designs or whatever. I mean, I really have no idea.
How revolutionary is this approach?
I can only go on what they said, and they sound like they're pretty excited about it. So maybe it's right.
Yeah. So the other cool thing, obviously, is that this is, and we talked about this last week, but this is the first of probably several or even many gigafactories. This is Gigafactory 1.
Yes.
And there's going to be at least one. Well, in the Tesla's grand plan, is going to be one on every continent, probably.
I think they're planning to integrate the car manufacturing as well.
Yeah.
So that you stick in raw materials on one end, and you stick, cars come out the other, as opposed to batteries come out the other, and then that goes to a car factory, and then they're put in the cars.
Yeah.
So you just have a big integrated factory that is ground up built on these principles that Elon Musk was talking about. And you have it as tightly packed as possible, producing the most stuff possible for that space, and using energy as efficiently as possible, presumably as well, etc., to try and a revolution in manufacturing is what they're kind of going for. Right?
Yeah, and that's a very cool idea. And if they're successful with it, then maybe you will see that idea kind of exported to other corners of manufacturing.
Sure.
But I mean, as we said, we don't know. Maybe it already is.
Yes.
I don't really know.
They seem to think it wasn't. I don't know.
But ultimately,
I have no reason to question that anyway.
Yeah, sure. Ultimately, Tesla's success depends really almost entirely. Well, maybe not almost entirely, but over the next sort of decade, their success really depends on this gigafactory producing what they hope it's going to produce.
Yeah, and cutting down costs to the amount they hope it's going to cut costs too. Because otherwise the cost of the Model 3 will go up.
Yeah.
And they won't
sell as many.
Yeah. The whole thing is to get a mass market car out. So
yeah, so the Model 3 is really the dependency. That's the thing that really matters.
Yes.
Is moving that, and
that's highly dependent on the Gigafactory.
But that is highly dependent on the Gigafactory. Yeah, I mean they've already got. It's like I actually haven't checked it in a while. Like how many pre-orders they've got for that?
It was 400,000, wasn't it?
It was like ages ago.
Yeah. Okay. I can't remember.
It was obviously plateau, but
yeah, it was a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah,
it was a lot.
So they're hopefully, so that's it. This Gigafactory is the kind of single point failure for that.
Yeah.
If they
and it's a big cost, obviously, for Tesla to have built.
Yeah.
They're building it with Panasonic, I think. So
yeah,
there is some spread of the risk there, but. Yep, we'll see. We'll see. It sounds like a really cool kind of Elon Musk type idea. It's just we'll keep an eye on it because it sounds like it might create some really interesting. I'll imagine there'll be a really cool video at some point of a battery from start to end going through all the different layers and sections and things of the Gigafactory. And
cool
what's it going to inside? It's going to look bizarre because it sounds like it's going to be quite compartmentalized.
Yeah,
and kind of. Quite sort of segmented in a way. I don't know.
You probably won't be aware that when you're in any one part of it, that you're in such a giant structure.
That's what I imagine.
Everything's gonna be quite packed in. I'd imagine.
Yeah.
There are some already some videos coming out from inside the bit that is complete. But yeah, I'm imagining it almost being a bit like flying around the inside of a circuit board or something. Just everything's just
But that's what they said. You design it like a microchip. Almost.
Yeah. Basically.
Cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah.
Related to that.
Yes.
There was something in the news that could potentially affect the Gigafactory.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the Gigafactory, but the whole electronics industry generally.
Yeah, like the whole world.
Anything that takes a battery. It was a new technology. It was an article published in Nature Energy, I think. So a big journal.
Mm.
And there were some news stories about it. And it was basically about a new type of battery concept that they've come up with. Which is a type of lithium air battery.
Yeah, so the battery concept itself isn't that new. The concept has been around. Yeah.
Sure. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a new type of lithium air, which is so a lithium ion battery is obviously what is used really widely now in electric cars and phones and laptops and just fucking loads of stuff.
Yeah.
And like we're all familiar with phones. They're just it's a limited technology in the sense that they have a lifetime. You can only charge them a certain number of times before they start losing their efficiency.
Yeah.
They get hot. They don't last that long. All that stuff.
Any improvements in battery technology are going to make a huge difference to loads of different sectors of industry. So everything from mobile phones to laptops in terms of battery life. Electric vehicles, particularly Tesla, if they have better capacity, they're going to be able to drive further. If they are smaller, lighter batteries, they're going to be able to be more efficient, drive faster, etc.
So much of the weight of a Tesla or an electric car is just a giant amount of batteries.
Yeah, exactly. And they're lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the Tesla. So it's a new concept. You said the lithium air concept is an older concept.
Yes.
And it basically just replaces various parts of the internal battery with other. The cathodes and anodes are made out of different things. But we don't need to go into that in too much detail. But essentially, you can get potentially a huge improvement in in the capacity of those batteries from lithium ion to lithium air.
Yes.
And this is basically a redesign of lithium air, which allows because lithium air has like a weird thing where you have to have actual air circulating into the battery in order to oxidize the lithium.
It's using oxygen from the air, so it's literally like your phone would be breathing.
Yeah.
It would literally have to have holes in the back.
Yes.
To breathe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to exchange the oxygen.
Yeah.
And so they've designed it so you can incorporate this oxygen actually into some sort of what was it as a cobalt?
Some kind of cobalt matrix.
Yeah.
Cobalt oxide matrix.
Yes.
With all these, it's like the chemistry of it is kind of slightly a bit weird.
Yeah.
But it's this lithium superoxide that you put in the pore spaces of this weird sort of cobalt foam almost. And the whole thing is self-contained in the same way that just a lithium-ion battery is.
Yes.
So the same way that the battery in your phone right now doesn't need to breathe.
Yes, exactly.
These would look the same and sort of be functionally similar, but just because of the type of reactions they're carrying out and stuff, have a greater energy yield. Yeah. And the materials are lighter as well. Yeah,
so essentially they've redesigned the lithium air concept to look more like a lithium-ion battery. They've had some breakthroughs in some materials technology that's allowed them to change the design so it doesn't need these open vents and things in it. And consequently, you potentially have a battery that can do at least, they think, double at the moment the capacity for the same mass of a lithium-ion battery.
With just their sort of experimental prototype. Which is, going to be refined heavily. They think they'll be able to double that again. They don't know how much further up. Lithium air batteries apparently can have the same. So it's the specific energy, which is like the amount of energy per mass it can contain, can be 5 to 15 times greater than lithium ion. So that going down that road, you potentially lead to very, very, very big gains. 15.
In the amounts of energy we can be storing in batteries. And there's, as far as they can see, there's no real big kind of cost barriers. The technology is not particularly like different or advanced or anything we're using before. It's not going to be particularly dangerous. It doesn't have any of the drawbacks. Lots of lithium air concepts have lots of drawbacks in terms of they get very hot when they're charging. They have short lifespans. They're quite unstable. Various bits and bobs. And it's also quite hard to keep the ducts and pores open inside these things.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a bizarre thing to have. You can't have just the idea of a battery open to the environment is just, and if those things get clogged up, it's just a bad idea.
And part of the thing is they're really sensitive. The lithium air batteries are really sensitive to, I think, humidity and stuff in the air, which is very costly to mitigate. You have to have very, very high cost materials in there to kind of filter out the
Yeah.
humidity and all that crap. And also carbon dioxide is apparently really bad for them as well. So all of that has to be scrubbed from the air.
I think a beetle just flew. You know that beetle that was running around earlier?
There's a beetle in here.
It just flew into the light. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, it's going to die in there.
No, it fell out of the light.
Oh, okay.
But it flew in and...
Well, maybe,
anyway,
maybe it'll come and join us and have a chat about war or something.
It's one of those stink bugs, I hope not. Anyway. Yeah, so it looks like a potentially a big breakthrough.
Yeah, and they reckon they can take it a year from now. They can be in a process, get to a point of being able to manufacture these.
Yeah, I think it's like in a breadboard kind of lab state at the moment. It's probably like a pot of electrolyite and just stuck with a bit of metal in it and this like lithium oxide things. It's probably a very
bit
DIY type, like breadboard type instrument at the moment. But like you say, a prototype in a year. They're already talking to manufacturers about taking it to market, and they've got a patent on it.
It's about time we have something like this.
I was just about to say, we've been stuck with lithium ion for a long time now. Well, it feels like a long time. I mean, it was like the old. I think the lead batteries, the AA, the big
like
old
Duracell or whatever. Yeah,
we had those when I was a kid.
Yeah, sure, same.
Jammed them in the Game Boys, and we moved on to lithium ion, and it felt like I think lithium ion batteries were around for a while. But they only really came to be in everything and weren't ridiculously expensive, when the sort of mobile phone kind of revolution began to happen, I suppose.
Yeah, or laptops maybe.
Laptops. I can't really remember.
Yeah, neither can I.
I don't have a good idea.
It's something I was very aware of at the time. I was obviously pretty young anyway.
Sure.
So.
But anyway, for at least sort of, I don't know, 2000 and sort of... late 2000s, so like 2005, 6, 7, something like that, till now, they've been in everything.
Yeah.
And there's been no sign that there's going to be any advancement.
Yeah, and think about how much the technology that they're powering has changed in that time.
Hugely. And
they've just sort of
they've
gradual incremental improvements,
yeah.
But nothing like the kind of fundamental step changes we've had in the actual phones that they're powering.
Exactly. So that maybe, I mean, this concept of the lithium air battery has been around since the 70s. So this and it has long been looked at as an alternative. Potentially, we're getting to a point now where we have it maybe in 2 years' time, say we will have quite obviously a paradigm change in the capacity, or just a big shift in the capabilities of batteries that we can store and put in phones, laptops, electric cars, etc.,
which
will make a massive difference to particularly an industry like Tesla, particularly a company like Tesla,
which does beg the question, how ready for it are they? Have they gone too far down the road of building a lithium ion battery producing factory? Or is this similar enough? I mean, the materials are essentially the same that you need. Is it similar enough that they could sort of step sideways into it and just continue?
Well, I did hear Elon Musk say a long time ago. I'm pretty sure he said that someone did ask him about what do you do if there is a big step change in battery technology, and he said he didn't expect one, but it wouldn't be probably that bad to refit the factory to build specifically this new type of battery technology, whatever it was, provided it wasn't radically different. And it sounds like it wouldn't be radically different. It would the chemistry and stuff would be different to produce the anodes and cathodes, etc. But in terms of like what you're producing, it would be kind of the same package of item. It's not like now it's a gel that you inject into the, it's not totally different. So maybe they'll be able to go back and, I mean, they're building a gigafactory to, it's going to be a while before you get to a point where this technology, even though it's very promising, is going to replace or be absolutely cost effective or match for cost benefit type thing with lithium ion. So it's going to be, I don't know, at least 5 years away. If it is everything goes well and it's as good as they say, maybe 10 years away. So they've got to run the gigafactory and produce at that scale.
With lithium ion.
Up until that point anyway, with lithium ion, and begin changing over to it. I don't see this as like a mistake of Tesla trying to build a giant factory.
No, sure. I'm also familiar with that quote you just said from Elon about how he doesn't expect the step change.
Yeah, but he did also say he didn't think it would be that hard to go back and refit the factory. I don't know if that's changed because they've maybe changed the design of the factory since then. It's more specific now.
It sounds like, so for the two things. For a start, this is obviously, if it works and if it's scalable and if it's commercially viable, this battery we've just been talking about is a big deal. It's a big change. But maybe it's not like as big a step change as he was referring to. Anyway, maybe it's not quite as fundamental a change as, say, like a radically new technology.
Sure.
It still is, lithium chemistry still is sort of, it's kind of similar in the way that it runs. It's just optimized and uses a slightly different chemistry. And secondly, it is quite similar. I mean, the raw materials that are so cobalt and lithium are two of the most common, the most abundant raw materials in lithium-ion batteries, and they're also going to be the two most abundant materials in these batteries. And as you said, you're still making like a little box thing that you're going to stick in your car or you're going to stick in your thing. Could essentially be made to be exactly the same size, fit in exactly the same. You pull out the battery from your laptop and shove in one of these, and it fits perfectly. Yeah, it just has twice the power.
Yeah, it might be that, or you might end up having smaller battery packs in cars or smaller battery packs in laptops, etc., which makes them lighter. But you could that would be specific down to the model of vehicle or the model of laptop. The production doesn't sound like it's going to be radically different.
Yes, so that's what I mean. It seems like
this isn't a giant misstep.
It's not a giant misstep, no. And they could potentially just transition into it if it does prove to be like fucking amazing, which it might. They can just sort of transition into it after they've already been running the factory for a little while producing lithium ion. Yeah.
So that's that. I mean, that's a. They're probably thrilled at this news, I would imagine. They're not like going, "Oh crap, we're building a gigafactory that's going to be producing the doing?" What they're actually probably thinking is, if this is for real, then our cars are going to. I mean, lithium air batteries get to the point where they match gasoline cars, I think, for specific energy.
Yeah,
I think
that's right.
Or they get to the point where they can do.
Yeah.
That they're going to end up being way more efficient than gasoline cars at converting that fuel to energy and stuff. So I think they're probably absolutely thrilled that there's something like this potentially in the pipeline, provided it is.
It's like we haven't done anything, and there's just suddenly our cars are like twice as powerful.
They have to pay
whatever.
through their arse though to get hold of it, probably.
Yeah, probably.
But the thing is, they patented it. The academics, I think, who are building it, Tesla might buy the patent off them maybe because they want to open source everything, don't they? Anyway, forgetting the patents now, because I still think there would be a lot of excitement about these types of breakthroughs in the EV community and at Tesla particularly.
Yeah. Right, enough of batteries.
Sick of that.
Time for war.
Which may, one day rely on battery technology.
Yeah, probably already does to a certain degree.
Yeah. It probably does.
Yeah, to probably quite a large degree anyway.
Right, yeah.
Right, yeah, So the idea, I think, is to talk about
war.
how war is going to change in the future.
Yes.
So we're gonna probably talk about like really near future stuff. So how it has changed leading up to now, and
some of the developments that we're starting to see.
Yeah, developments we're starting to see, and how that's going to sort of change warfare and the battlefield and stuff.
Sure.
And then look a bit further forwards, and then just talk complete nonsense.
Yeah. We're just going to be speculating about stuff, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I'm excited.
Yes.
So if we think about how wars have changed to start with, okay. So war's kind of gone from in history from sort of close combat type stuff. You think back to I suppose the first like monkeys are just bashing on each other. They're biting, they're punching, etc.
The odd rock maybe in the face.
Do they use rocks to smash up other apes?
I don't know. Maybe we probably did at some point. There would have been a time when we were just basically doing that.
Yeah, well then we're picking up the tools, right? And everything went downhill. We got getting much better at killing stuff when we got those tools.
Yeah.
So bashing stuff with rocks. Then developed, kind of spear type things, sharpening, flint type weapons, all this sort of stuff, which was used for hunting and fighting.
Yeah.
Then towards the more advanced kind of medieval combat stuff. So that's
starting to get machinery in now.
Some machinery, some armor type plating, shields, all this sort of things, bow and arrows, and then
siege weapons.
Yeah, and the crossbow, for example, the crossbow was a big development in warfare.
Yeah, it was.
The ability for anyone to fire something that had a good long range. but fire very accurately, as opposed to a longbow, which was very hard to pull back, and you had to be very, very good with it to be able to hit something. A crossbow is like a point and click.
Yeah, longbows. You had to be like a specialist longbow archer, basically.
Yeah, and I think crossbows were just basically an easier version.
Yeah, you just give everyone one of them and they just run around shooting each other.
Yeah, I think the British for a while said they didn't want to fight with crossbows because they said it was unchristian or something like that. I swear I've heard that.
Like unsporting or something.
Yeah, that it was unfair.
They've said that a few times about a few things across history.
Oh, the English have?
Yeah. I think even in the First World War, they didn't want to use machine guns at first because they thought it was unsporting.
Really?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. They learned quickly that the enemy didn't want to have the same idea.
No, yeah. I mean, jeez. Yeah, so then you move from bows and arrows, swords and stuff, starting to go into gunpowder, cannons and things for a start. And of course, you're using, like you're saying, vehicles. So ships were a big thing back in the day. Horses,
chariots,
not really vehicles, but chariots. Yeah. Which were basically the sort of tanks of their day. You know, they're ploughing through people, and then. Yeah, then you're onto the gunpowder weapons. So you're onto the kind of musket type guns.
Blunderbuss and
when you're starting to get to the sort of mechanized killing, going up to once you get to World War One, you're starting to get some pretty horrible, very efficient killing machines. So like machine guns.
Yeah.
And in World War Two, I mean, you're really that's why there's so many deaths in World War II. World War I was really bad, officially, as well, for deaths. So more deaths in World War II, but it's a bigger war.
Yeah, that's the thing, bigger war.
World War I was different in the sense that their tactics were totally different. They were just
didn't know what they were doing.
Send people in.
They had all this technology.
Trench warfare, yeah.
Yeah, they had this technology that had never been really used in war before, and they just didn't really know how to use it.
Right.
So they just send in waves of people. I mean, the trenches would just sit there for months and months and months, and then eventually you just climb out of the trench and just walk towards the enemy and just get mowed down by automatic weapons.
Yes.
Fucking savage.
Yeah, exactly. And so our ability to kind of kill lots of people became... Basically, we were able to kill a lot more people with a much smaller and more inexpensive instruments and use less manpower to do it.
Yeah.
Towards the end of World War II, there started to be some changes in all sorts of things from... for example, big battleships were starting to be phased out. Big multi-cannon battleships that used to just sort of sit there and just lump at each other.
Yeah, just like within kind of visual range, just two giant ships just slugging it out.
Yeah, that began to die off because planes were being armed with anti-ship torpedoes, and later on began to develop very good missile technology to be able to launch missiles from ships, and so that kind of it became much more of a kind of range war type situation. Where you weren't having very large firepower platforms, but it was all kind of airborne type stuff. And of course, at the end of World War II, you had one of the biggest developments in warfare, which is the nuclear bomb. Which
big game changer.
More or less seems to have stopped superpowers fighting each other and just funneled them into having proxy wars in places like Vietnam or Iraq or wherever.
Yeah, that's a euphemism as well. It's not half, isn't it? Your proxy war sucks to be the proxy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
but yeah, you're right. I mean, if you look back through the last, 500 years, but basically, or maybe slightly more, like Western Europe is just like a constant list of England war against France, Belgium, Denmark, and then that finishes 2 years later. The Spanish and the French, and then the Dutch were getting involved, and then the Swedish were having a go, and it's like just constant all the time. If you were like in the army or in the navy or something at that time, and you didn't die, your career was just full of war. You were literally a professional. You were professionally at war all the time. It was just constant. You were just constantly going to war.
Much more. I mean, we still have conflict zones, don't we? They don't tend to be in the countries for Western civilization anyway. Most of the kind, like we're saying, proxy war type things. Mm-hmm. Most of the wars that the armies now get involved in are going to foreign lands and dropping bombs basically.
Yeah.
Iraq war was obviously troops on the ground, but maintaining non-fly zones, these types of things. So there's quite different. Really, from kind of being in a regimented kind of unit. That's, I mean, those types of old school wars in Europe, they went on for ages, like the 100-Year War and all these types of things.
Yeah, crazy.
Just constant. But that once Europe was kind of made into Europe to try and stop the world wars happening, wasn't it? Because both world wars stemmed from Europe.
Yeah.
World War Two is basically like World War One Part Two.
Yeah.
Really. Once you have development of that kind of, if you like, European superpower, the consolidation of it anyway. And even though the UK's now left it, I mean, they're still going to be in NATO still exists and whatever, and it's still going to, well, it might not, Trump's not happy about NATO. And then an alliance with the US and places like Australia, and you have that kind of larger alliance. And then with Russia, China, or these other kind of patches of sort of alliances, there's too much at stake now to have these big open conflicts with other well-developed countries like we used to. Basically, we've got too much good technology now.
Too much good technology, and also that just the world's economy is just so integrated,
interdependent. Yeah.
That these big economic superpowers can't afford to just be fighting each other.
No.
Because the whole thing will collapse.
Yes, but they still do it. But sort of.
Yeah, they do it, but pretend they're not doing it at the same time.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of not just proxy wars, but sort of war games and playing on the
a bit of posturing,
doing posturing, and exactly, and scoping out area, flying over sorties over that's posturing, I suppose, over the South China Sea and this sort of thing that the Chinese are trying to take over those islands or whatever they believe. So there's kind of they're not wars, but they're this kind of constant, like you're saying, posturing and kind of chest beating that happens around the world. Yeah,
it's a need to constantly advertise your military might, I guess. Yes. Just to kind of remind the other superpowers that you're still there and you're still capable.
Yeah, but that's very different, to these global wars that we were once able to have.
It's interesting.
It was only a very short period, though, wasn't it? Really, because we had. These civil wars and more regional conflicts. And then you had enough technology that people could have a global war. Yeah. And then that very quickly, that technology became so advanced that a global war is just too destructive and you can't have it anymore.
Yeah.
So there's only a small window potentially where you could really reliably produce global warfare without the people who are instigating that warfare fearing for their lives, kind of.
Yeah. That's the thing with that. Well, nukes especially bring about that.
Yes.
Now, this concept that nobody is safe. So even the people sitting in their, like fortified bunkers or whatever, like directing the wars, are still plausibly at risk.
From a nuclear weapon,
attack.
They are, exactly. Even though you can get nuclear bunkers, I mean, if you nuke an entire country, I mean, you can survive that in a nuclear bunker, sure, but you're just in a wasteland after that. You've got no country left, nothing nothing to rule, nothing to defend. So it would take a madman basically to and that is the fear of nuclear weapons, the constant fear of nuclear weapons, that they get into the hands of someone who is totally deranged and just fires one for no reason.
Yeah. But
generally they've all kept each other they've kept each other at bay and only having proxy wars.
Yeah.
So that's kind
of
where
we're at now. Which you'd hope is the way that it would still keep going into the future.
Yeah,
with these deterrents, but it's interesting. It's interesting how you were just running through that, like how wars changed over the ages from like apes ripping each other apart all the way up to nukes.
Yeah,
and how each step of the way that technology's always been basically designed to more efficiently kill people. Essentially, like we picked up a rock because it was better at killing than just bare hands.
Yeah, sure.
And you just follow that all the way through. Sure. But actually, the end result of that is that you end up with far fewer people dying from war. Even though we have the most destructive,
it got to a point,
the most efficient killing machines now. So that's not a trend that you could follow through the entire thing. It's not like the more efficient they got, the fewer people died, obviously, because of the First World War, Second World War.
Yeah, but that was potentially the peak.
That was a peak, yeah. And whether it more and more people were dying, fewer people dying throughout, it's hard to say. But certainly there was a peak, and after this peak is the rest of the 20th century. Yes, there's been some pretty horrible conflicts around the world, but death from war.
I mean, the number of people who died in Vietnam was massive.
Yeah, it's massive. It's
absolutely
horrendous.
Massive.
Yeah, it's really bad.
And I mean, loads of people have been dying. I don't actually. I would quite like to know what. I mean, because in China and stuff, there were some huge wars that you don't really hear about, or big amounts of civilian deaths and all sorts of things that you don't really hear about so much in Europe.
Yeah.
But I would imagine the peak of people dying in wars was probably in the world wars.
Yes.
and I don't know if it's been decreasing since.
I think it has been roughly decreasing. It's a bit all over the place, I think, the statistics. Like, certain years are really high in comparison to like the 5 years before that or whatever.
Sure, because there's the spike because there is a flash zone or whatever.
Yeah, but there has been a general trend towards fewer deaths from war over the last sort of several decades.
Okay.
Whether that will hold, who knows?
Yes, and it's whether you attribute that directly to weapons. A correlation doesn't mean a causation.
Yeah, that's very.
You might have an improving technology, but that improving technology might not be the weapons getting better to kill each other, but rather the fact that we get much better information technology that means we can communicate better. And stuff.
Yeah, and national borders maybe aren't as important as they once were. Although they probably are even more important in certain areas.
Sure.
Just the global spread of information.
A global economy
does a lot.
Exactly. To understand the people you're potentially in conflict with.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of struggling towards a global civilization of some kind.
Sort of.
And we'll talk about this a bit later on, but that war is not something that's particularly sustainable in a successful, flourishing global civilization.
No.
So
maybe So if we're moving down that trend, then if we think about what actually happens though in sort of day-to-day war.
Yeah.
Okay. We still have people on the ground. We still use vehicles, but we just kind of have more advanced versions of them. So more kind of things that are up and coming. If we think about. Well, let's start with people on the ground, okay, and how that might change first in the near term.
Yeah, okay.
So we've already got people on the ground. We've already got lots of advanced weaponry and things. We're starting to integrate autonomy into that process already.
Sure.
As we are in almost all industrial sectors.
So like drones and stuff on the battlefield, because obviously we already have
predator drones,
reconnaissance or even strike drones, high altitude, whatever.
Yeah.
But actual drones. On the battlefield is on the cusp of happening. I mean, the police are using them already. There was that Dallas incident a few weeks back.
Yeah.
They actually used. I mean, so it wasn't an autonomous drone. It was, I think, remote controlled.
Yes.
But it's still an incident of using, like a robot essentially to take out a suspect.
Yeah, they blew up.
They blew out the shooter.
What did they do? They put a bomb on it.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's basically it had an explosive device on it, whether it was a kind of a kamikaze.
Oh yeah, and it destroyed itself.
Yeah, suicide thing.
Or
whether it sort of planted a bomb sneakily and left, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think that was the first instance of that being used sort of in anger, in that sense.
Yes.
But I mean, these are technologies that.
I mean, Reaper drones and stuff have killed loads of people over the years, right?
Yeah, of course.
All sorts of different places. But in terms of that situation, a robot as such.
Yeah.
Going in there and doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something.
Maybe it's the first time it's been used by the police.
Yeah.
Rather than.
So I mean, it makes sense from the perspective of. I mean, and people. There is a big kind of moral debate that would happen and will happen as to whether this ethical to do, be using. There already is a huge debate happening as to whether it's ethical to use Reaper drones and Predator drones. I think Reaper drones are the ones that drop the missiles, right? And Predator drones are the ones that do the recon. I think so. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A big debate as to whether you should be killing people with these types of things. But in the future, it makes sense from the perspective of the army of trying to save your troops, essentially, to have a quadcopter type thing that has a gun on it, and it just you see some enemies fire it, you fly the quadcopter towards them and try and take them out without ever exposing your troops to a firefight with the enemy. You just send up a little quadcopter or a fleet of them or whatever.
And what about if they're autonomous? They're actually making decisions themselves.
Well, that is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
If they're that's a total different kettle of fish because they've got to make decisions on who to kill, who not to kill. That's starting to get
slippery. That's a messy business.
It's very.
I've not
messy.
really thought about that before. Interesting one.
Well, there's a debate that needs to be, and I mean, in some ways, it is being settled in the sense that the army is using drones to kill people.
Yeah.
And people can protest all they want. It's doing nothing to stop them.
Yeah, but I mean, you could just argue that that's just an extension of the gun or whatever,
Oh, yeah,
that's
what I was about to say.
That's what
I was about to say.
Yeah.
I was about to say maybe that debate is over.
Yeah.
Even though, people don't like it. I mean, protests and stuff can change minds and people might change their minds about it, but ultimately, I feel like
there's not much of a line between like a Reaper drone and just a guided missile from a ship.
No,
really.
no, not at all. No.
So that's quite hard to.
Or just dropping a missile from a plane that's got a guy in it.
Yeah.
Like it really isn't that different.
Yeah. But then, but the actual concept of having a fully autonomous drone,
that is different.
like a self-driving car that
yes.
is able to go out there and decide, okay, this is a threat. I'm going to take this threat out.
Yeah.
And those are civilians. I'm not going to hurt them. Like
that's
leaving that decision in the mind of an AI.
You're getting to you need that's really advanced.
Yeah,
AI
that's advanced.
I mean, that's really very far along.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. I mean, making those decisions is not easy as a human.
No, of course not. We'll eventually get to a point where the machine is better at making those decisions than we are.
Yes.
And demonstrably better.
That's the thing.
And at that point, it actually makes ethical sense
to use it. Yeah.
Because it would be better than we are. It'd be fewer, like collateral damage and stuff would be a lot less. But that's only when the technology is good enough.
Yeah. It is gonna. That's a very tricky area. It's a very tricky area. The end point, I think, if AIs get to that stage, there's no reason why they wouldn't. Considering any rate of improvement, then you're going to be looking at something that is better than a human, distinguishing a foe and a civilian or whatever,
and deciding when it's tactical, like a tactical decision to take someone out, opposed to like a decision to not take them out. Whereas people might decide to just gun them down regardless.
Yes.
So you might find circumstances where it just minimizes the loss of life.
Yeah.
Because it realizes that the optimal way of doing something is only to kill that one guy, not these 10 people with a rocket or something.
Sure. More precision.
Yeah.
And a lot of warfare does move towards that in terms of trying to take out, specific targets as opposed to carpet bombing. That's why things like cluster bombs and stuff were banned. Well, they were banned for other reasons because the clusterlets get picked up by people and stuff and they don't all explode. But yeah, I can imagine those types. Drones would definitely help with precision and minimizing collateral damage, but they'll probably also, it's another way of increasing your efficiency at killing. So more people may end up dying potentially. I can see why people don't like the idea of kind of a video game type killing, because it does in some way remove the person who's making that decision from. Yeah,
it almost seems like it's trivializing it to the person doing it.
Yes.
Even though it might not be, it might still be quite affecting the person who's actually doing it, but it seems to the rest of the public maybe like a bit more of a removal, a bit more, like it's just trivial, like it's just playing a video game.
Yes. I can see why that it creates an sort of involuntary, like.
Yeah, there's a sort of slight, slightly recoil from it a bit, I guess.
Yeah, which I think is understandable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I understand it completely.
But yeah, you could see a greater diversity of drone type systems. So not just bomb disposal, remote control, but quadcopter type things are going to be used anyway.
They wouldn't just have to be offensive either. You could have. Equipment carrying drones, recon drones. What else? Like recovery drones, medical drones.
Things that build stuff, like a robot that turns up and builds a compound, like a very specific, like defensive structure or something like that.
Yeah. I'm imagining those, those big dog Boston Dynamics.
Sure. That's proper robotics then.
Yeah.
Not just drones.
Yeah, sure.
So they're like that. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about. Yeah, they're really cool. But that's
the kind of four-legged, like. Quadruped things.
Exactly, yeah.
So like trotting across
which would
the
be
battlefield.
able to help increase the amount of weight that can be carried around the battlefield, and they can go over terrain much better than wheeled vehicles.
Apparently they're loud as shit, though.
They are pretty loud. I think it's there was the big dog one, the huge thing, which
was like a small horse.
It looked like a sort of looked like a small cow.
They're quite funny looking things.
Yeah,
actually.
Weird looking. It looks like something out of Metal Gear Solid if you've ever played any of the Metal Gear games. Some of the Metal Gear robots have that kind of limb structure.
Yeah, sort of
the way
squat,
they're kind of bent
weirdly,
kind of, and they sort of
bow-legged.
But anyway, they make a screaming loud noises, don't they?
Yeah.
The newest version, that one that was playing with a dog in the car park.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was a bit quieter.
Okay. Yeah, of course. I've seen the videos of it, and they're not actually that loud. Those little ones.
Not nowhere near as loud anymore.
What are they called? The little ones? Is it like a? No, that's something else.
I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to say cheetah, but that's something else.
The cheetah's the one that runs really fast.
Yeah.
That's the tiny, much smaller robot.
Yeah.
It does run bloody fast. And they've got the Atlas robot as well, which is like a humanoid robot.
Oh,
which is falling all over the place.
Yeah, that's falling over. But cool.
That's cool.
That's coming as well.
Yeah.
Not for war, maybe, who knows? But for warehouses and all those other kinds.
Well, yeah. I mean, and then there's use for those type of warehouse, robots in the battlefield for moving ammunition around and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can have some of your workforce that doesn't get tired for doing sort of chores and sort of mindless tasks, if you like. You can just get robots to sort of run the base and refill ammunition, etc., etc. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is
but
cool.
a lot of deployment of infantry and all these types of things would be greatly enhanced by adding robotic.
Yeah. If
they were good and able to. Not. I can imagine them being a pain sometimes with the robots because they might run out of fuel or whatever. They could, it's maybe over engineering the problem. But
that's right.
But I think
not every problem is going to be like, right, let's make a robot that does it.
But I think you could plausibly have robots helping out with these types of tasks. I think and greatly improving efficiency and whatnot.
Reconnaissance in dangerous areas and. Say rubble clearing or building something in a dangerous area.
Yeah,
they're probably pretty legit uses of drones and robots that will help. Just the general soldiers on battlefields.
Okay, so thinking about the actual guns that people are holding, then, so the guns that are mounted on the drones, they won't stay the same, presumably, or will they? I mean, are we always going to be stuck at shooting bullets at each other, even
little
like
lumps of metal?
Yeah, even in a far future where there's robots fighting each other, they might not because it might be more cyber warfare type.
Yeah.
Anyway, in terms of kind of near future, are we going to be shooting bullets at each other forever? Are those bullets going to change particularly? I mean. What goes into a gun now is the guns are more advanced than they were in the Second World War and stuff, but they're not that different.
No, I mean ultimately, again, it's just some explosive launching a small metal projectile fast enough to penetrate a person's body. Basically, it.
Yeah,
and that hasn't really changed. I mean, they've got more efficient and they've got more powerful.
Yeah,
and more accurate and all that.
And they've got some more advanced scopes and things. But really,
ultimately, on the bottom line, that's what they are. And there have been like bullets, like exploding tip bullets and hollow tips and kind of weird bullets made of phosphorus and shit, which are horrible.
Phosphorus?
Yeah, it got banned. Is it phosphorus?
Oh, some, the white phosphorus things.
Yeah, some horrendously like reactive metal.
I think Israel was potentially going a bit mad with them.
Yeah. It's pretty grim.
Yeah, horrible.
It's like balls your flesh away, basically.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but the actual, I mean, there are some changes, right? Recently, there were some developments with those. What are those bullets that fly at people?
So
X-Acto bullets.
Yeah, X-Acto bullets. I think that's what they're called.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is have you seen that film? Oh, I can't even remember the name of it. It's really shit. There's a film where it's based on a graphic novel, I think, and it's got James McAvoy, Angelina Jolie. And they're like part of this like ancient cult of assassins or something like that.
Oh shit, yeah.
And they like curve the bullet
by
like
shit
flicking the gun. I curve the bullet. It's pretty hilarious. But anyway, it's basically it's kind of like it reminds me of that. I can't remember what it's called.
But it is in principle. I mean
it's not. It's a bit more guided. I mean that they just kind of like flick their wrist or something, and the bullet curves. But basically, the idea of it is that you can have guided bullets, or at least guided to a certain degree. Not guided in the same way that like a guided missile is guided, or guided rocket. But
sure,
because that's fairly accurate and has got like guidance computers and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm not sure what actually goes in computer-wise to the bullets. They have some. So basically, what it is, isn't it? So
there must be some electronics actually in it. It's
got.
There must. That's a good point.
It doesn't have fins on it or anything.
No. So my basic understanding of it is basically that you have these rings around the bullet that are capable of contracting and expanding.
Yeah.
Which obviously just changes the aerodynamics of the bullet.
Yes.
And by doing that in a certain order, you can get it to move through the air by changing its spin rate and various other things. You can get it to change course.
Yeah. So you literally watch a video of it, and
Yeah.
there's like someone shooting at a target that's moving, and they're shooting, and where the bullet would have gone, kind of like is shown with a line, and the bullet just like drifts right off and sort of drifts its way towards and just hits almost. I think it was every time they were in that test they were showing. It was just every time it was hitting the target.
Yeah.
And basically, I think it works by someone else is pointing a laser
Yeah.
at the target, which you just keep on there, and the sniper just lets off a bullet in the vague direction of it, and the bullet finds its way to the target, no matter what, which is again good for precision, for trying to get the people you want to get, not wasting ammo. I mean, it's a crazy thing to think that
It does sort of seem a bit like
homing
magic to me.
bit
There
like magic.
must. I hadn't been thinking straight about it, but there must be some vague, very simple, almost like avionics or something in the bullet itself. Some kind of like electronics that are capable of sensing the laser and reacting to it.
How else would it work?
How else would it work? Yeah, it must be that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mad concept, but
It's almost like that. You get to the point where there's like a magic bullet that you just, you tell it the name of someone and it flies off and kills them.
just like open the door and like leave it outside and then off it goes.
But those types of things, implemented into drones or onto soldiers are going to make a big difference, to long distance fighting, to the tactics that the enemy's going to have to use to avoid those types of things. Because if you're able to hit someone off such a long distance so consistently,
Yeah.
they're going to have to try and change it so that, they're only trying to fight underground or whatever. They have to adapt their tactics to deal with those types of advancements. So that, we were talking about this general trend of warfare as becoming kind of almost longer range. That's kind of another...
Yeah.
On the infantry side, I mean, obviously you get longer range things than bullets, but the safety zone for the enemy is
Gets pushed back.
Gets pushed back, exactly.
Because accuracy isn't so much of an issue when you have one of these things.
Yeah, so any advancement like that, or anything like a drone, if you have air superiority and you have drones everywhere and,
They're all
targeting
armed
computers within, like kind of augmented reality type headsets on all the soldiers that are using the drones to tell them where people are and scan buildings to see where every heat signature and all this kind of stuff. The tactics of the warfare change very dramatically, because in those situations you can no longer fight in the old ways you were fighting, because you just definitely lose.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of rebel groups, I suppose, end up fighting with sort of terrorists type tactics or underground insurgency type tactics, where they just attack random parts of civilians, or the odd kind of surprise attack on military convoys, as opposed to stand and fight, because
like big pitch battles.
You can't win those.
Yeah.
Essentially.
They're just way over-egged by the technology of the other side.
Yeah,
basically.
and even those tactics of ambushes and whatnot will become harder and harder to do if you've got drones scouting ahead of you.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see shifts from the actual weapons that people carry, if we do stick to bullets for the foreseeable future, just based on where those weapons are mounted, if they're on drones, and indeed on the bullets and the things they're firing and the targeting computers they're using. So even though the actual firing mechanism might not be that different, the bullet that's going and the computers that you're used to target everything, and you might end up actually with quite big differences in the way people have to fight and deal with those types of things.
Yeah.
But you never know, maybe we'll go bullets free one day.
Well, with something like directed energy weapons.
Yeah, which is obviously a bit further in the future.
Yeah. Well, they do sort of exist already.
Yeah, sure.
But they're not. You can't actually use them on people.
No, you can't get.
It's banned.
It is banned. That's the thing, and that might be another reason why we're stuck with not that I particularly want directed energy weapons, but that's why bullets might.
Even though they seem like quite an archaic sort of way of.
If you can't use directed energy weapons, what else are you going to be using?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just going to get more advanced bullets or little like warhead missile type things, or whatever it ends up being.
Projectiles of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Directed energy weapons are basically like anything from a maser, a laser, a particle accelerating weapon, or whatever, but a Star Wars gun.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Or Star Trek.
Yeah. Like if the particle accelerator ones are actually pretty nuts, because they're things like they actually fire like a concentrated beam of particles, like protons or something. It's like a proton cannon. I mean, that is just something out of Star Trek or Star Wars. It really is.
Yeah, well, it's the same sort of technology used for a particle accelerator, literally trying to convert that into a weapon.
Yeah.
They are going to be using directed energy weapons for fighting against things like drones
and rocket missiles
rocket
and
deflection
things like that.
and these types of things. I mean, that was it Iron. You know that the Israelis have an Iron Dome system that shoots down rockets that get shot over from Gaza into Israel. And I think they're looking at, or there was some talk about integrating a system that had a laser targeting system that blew up the rocket, as opposed to like Gatling guns or whatever they had before.
Okay.
And certainly they're being used and tested and trialed for ships and these types of things where you mount a laser on the front of the ship and point and take down drones, or in a situation like a sort of Somali pirate situation, you just point this laser at the engine of the boat they're using and just burn it, melt it to bits, and then they're just screwed basically.
And that approach could be taken with any vehicle basically. The tires of a troop carrying armored car or something like that, or whatever.
Yes,
like a tank or something.
So there's room for directed energy weapons. In the sense that as long as they're, I think it's just non-lethal. You can't use lethal directed energy weapons against people or any. I mean, because they
just cause too much pain?
They basically just considered
burn you.
I think in the same line of things like using white phosphorus. I think it just the injuries. Obviously, the injuries from bullets and missiles are horrific, but it just tends to more frequently result in extremely painful high. Like maiming injuries that don't necessarily kill you. You just sort of burn half your body off, but don't necessarily.
Like mazes and stuff just sort of boil half you away.
Yeah, I mean, you could
just
do
end
that.
up like horrendously disfigured.
If you forgot the Geneva Convention, you could just sit outside with a giant like microwave laser, and just blast at, whatever you wanted, or I don't know. That's deflected.
No one would mess with you.
Or some horrible kind of sound, something that would screw up all your senses, or you could use lasers, very high powered lasers to burn insurgents or whatever, as like a weapon of fear almost. Even if it was, although the good thing about a laser, is that it's much easier to hit someone potentially with than a bullet. In the sense that you just point, it doesn't have a travel time, and doesn't get affected by wind or anything. You just have this fucking massive laser, and you just turn it on, and just bing, bing, bing. You're just burning.
And again, that helps accuracy, and it helps probably minimizing casualties that you don't want.
Maybe, I mean, but they're banned anyway, and
sure.
I can see why. I mean, you don't really want to be.
Yeah.
So I can see why things like white phosphorus are banned. So I can see why lasers are banned.
Yeah.
Being used in those types of warfare situations, but I mean, there's definitely room for them to be used in, non-lethal cases.
But probably we're looking at least in the near future, bullets are going to be here to stay.
Pretty much, bullets and explosives.
The weapon of choice.
Yeah, which is kind of odd. I mean, I just can't imagine a sci-fi future without lasers.
Yeah, almost every single sci-fi film and TV show uses. Like non-projectile weapons. Yeah, it's a bit bizarre to actually find.
Go a million years in the future and everyone's just still got a shotgun. Just still exactly the same sort of stuff. That would just be bizarre.
What about the people themselves? The actual infantry.
Well, I suppose. They're gonna. I mean, you're gonna change.
What we're gonna see coming.
You'll see things like exoskeletons.
Yeah, well, that's actually something that's already been being investigated, talked about, developed now.
Yeah.
And they are cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool in the sense that they make you strong and
you
fast. Superman. Or Iron Man, It's kind of like an Iron Man suit.
Yes.
Like a really budget shit version of the Iron Man suit.
I mean, at the moment, I don't really know. I've seen videos of really cool ones where there's sort of a guy lifting stuff up, but I don't know how practical they are to deploy at the moment.
Yeah, they probably have huge power sources and stuff
exactly.
like that.
Exactly, I don't know how long they last, if it's really practical to put someone out in a combat situation in a ridiculous looking sort of Elysium type, exoskeleton.
Yeah, or it might not look like that. It might be covered in some kind of crazy body armor. Like a space marine from Warhammer.
Oh yeah, good shout.
Yeah. Or like some kind of small mech-like thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just running around.
But you can see, I mean, those sorts of things, they will, I imagine, get integrated.
Just because they minimise your casualties a lot more.
Yeah, and it stops fatigue. Yeah, the ultimate goal is to minimise your casualties.
Yeah.
But it would help specifically with things like fatigue of soldiers, their ability to run long distances, that sort of stuff. Also help with steadying your aim, maybe.
Yeah.
Just various benefits, I could imagine, and maybe protection as well. You can wear more body armor, you can carry more gear,
ammo,
bigger guns,
larger guns, more guns.
Do you reckon you can punch hard? You can like punch through a wall, smash through a wall,
just like reach in and grab the enemy, just rip him out,
chuck him. Yeah, possibly.
Like flip over a car or something.
Now that would be cool.
Yeah,
that is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping lasers and like car flipping like exoskeleton humans.
and really fast running as well in this thing.
Yes. Oh yeah, like mad fast.
Yeah.
Like running alongside a vehicle that's like accelerating away, and you just leap onto it and like rip the bonnet open and pull the engine out.
Yeah, this is definitely what I'm imagining. Like rip the 50 cal off the back and just use it yourself as your own gun.
Well, and you could. What about like things like jetpacks? You've got like an exoskeleton with like a fucking jetpack, and you just come in, you land like kind of like superhero landing. You know, and like there's like a sort of ripple of energy as you land.
This basically is Iron Man.
Yeah,
basically is.
Yeah.
I'm imagining it a bit sort of more functional and kind of larger and a bit more military than Iron Man.
It would be. I think if exoskeletons get integrated in the near future, they're going to be what they might end up looking fairly minimal. You know, it might not be a huge kind of giant thing
like
you wear,
suit thing,
but rather
just increase your strength and increase your
in a few key areas and that's sort of it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, if they're actually used, I think they probably will be used.
Well, there's a possibility they might not.
Depends. I guess it depends how quickly other things like robotics and stuff advance.
If you get to the point where and we'll talk a bit about this later, but if you're using a lot more robotics, drones, and kind of their autonomous systems as opposed to ground soldiers, then you're probably going to get to a point where you don't really bother with exoskeletons.
Yeah.
Because they're unnecessary.
Yeah.
So, and of course the soldiers, not just changing the exoskeleton, like that might be a way to change the soldiers, but you can also like do things like genetic engineering, which I think is probably unlikely. I think it's I don't think it's
in the near future. It certainly is.
Yes, I don't mean it's unlikely that we'll ever genetically modify humans in the future. I sort of mean it's unlikely that we'll probably genetically engineer soldiers specifically, because I think we'll have machines that do those jobs better. By the point in which it's kind of ethically acceptable and it's understood, the knowledge base is good enough to be doing those kinds of genetic modifications to people safely. I think it's a long way off, and I think the long way off. We'll have a lot more autonomous kind of machines that will be able to do the jobs that ground soldiers do. So
if you think that by then, sort of the just general sort of societal moral sort of change, I mean, the thought of actually specifically breeding like a population of like superhuman soldiers,
it's like in an ant
won't be
colony.
something people want to do.
No.
What you're going to do is like just tinker with their genome so that they're just like sort of aggressive but disciplined and like
fearless, very high pain thresholds, very strong, etc.
Yeah, I don't think ethically, I don't think people will go for that.
No.
I don't think people will go for it now, and certainly not in, when we have that technology. You'd imagine that if anything, we would, the future humans will look back on us as being sort of like savages.
In some aspects.
Some aspects, maybe not. Savages is the wrong word, but just a
morally
bit backwards.
Yes, sure.
So, I don't. You're right. I don't see that as a road that we'll go down. Genetic modification generally, maybe, but
here's an interesting idea though. We may not genetically engineer people to be specifically soldiers, but genetic modification is going to be really could be right. Okay, so you win a war. Not really by being the kind of like toughest.
Yeah.
You win a war by being the smartest, really. Yeah. You have the best technology.
Yeah.
If a war broke out and people were genetically engineering people to be smarter, okay, so they're deliberately breeding their population to not kind of eugenic style, but going in and physically changing the genomes of embryos to produce scientists or really, really, really intelligent people to help design weapons, etc., etc. It's kind of it'd have to be a long war to make that worthwhile.
Yeah, multi-generational.
You could imagine that those kinds of genetic modifications. So having a smarter population would.
So you're not breeding like a race of soldier people.
No.
Like superhumans.
But you're just trying to make your population more capable.
Population, yeah.
Yeah, and so you do that by every baby has the same genetic modification that means on average all their population is like 50, 60 IQ points higher.
But so the thing is, if that technology was available and safe and accepted,
everyone would be
doing it anyway. So we would already be tweaking all these dials to the kind of
I'm saying in a conflict situation where maybe it's not necessarily a shared technology and it's not ethically accepted in all countries, but someone starts doing it in a conflict situation. They're like, this is the way we're going to win the war. Is we're going to have better ideas than everyone else, and we're going to do that by breeding smarter people. I mean, it might get to a point where this is happening where actually that's not the smart thing to do. The smart thing to do is build smarter machines.
Yeah.
But maybe that's how genetic engineering could come into warfare, in the sense that it's more of a population kind of changing.
Yeah, it's sort of more indirect or less direct than actually breeding soldiers. But yeah,
I think that would come as a conflict in any way, shape or form, because if you're doing that to your population, you're going to get benefits in any area if you're in conflict or not, right?
Yeah.
So if you're competing with a country that has a significantly smarter population than your country, you're going to lose that competition goal in economics, in trade, in everything, basically.
So if you're that country that has that access to that technology, even if you're not in combat, even if you're not in a war, kind of makes sense to just do it.
Yeah.
If you're happy doing it,
yes,
and your population is happy with you doing it,
yeah,
or they don't know, or whatever,
or they don't know. Anyway,
yeah. But I can see what you're getting at, and I think that is one way that genetic modification could be used, sort of indirectly, to win a war. In a war scenario, it would have to be a pretty dystopian future, like a kind of multi-generational.
We're thinking something like
superpower,
pretty mad,
like China v the US. For like 100 years type situation.
Yes, yeah.
Which would be shit for everyone.
It would be shit. I mean, I don't see those sorts of wars lasting very long, because a full open scale war between superpowers that doesn't last long if you've got nukes flying left, right, and centre.
No.
So maybe that situation is kind of unrealistic anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Genetic engineering, bit of a fringe thing. Probably not going to come into play. I think machines would be the more obvious way to go. It takes a long time to grow a human. Once you've done the genetic modification.
Whereas machines can be iterated quickly and new models produced.
Exactly. So maybe you go down that route instead.
Yeah.
One other thing.
Yes.
Do you think we're ever legal? Well, I suppose it comes into the directed energy weapons thing as well. Change things on the Geneva Convention. So legalize. So we're talking about weapons and how ground weapons might change. Legalize things like chemical weapons or biological weapons, or those directed energy weapons. I don't see us ever legalizing those.
They're horrible. I mean, chemical weapons, biological weapons are horrible.
They're very effective.
Yeah, they're very tactically effective.
As in terms of,
like, if you get your enemy to run away and hide and stop whatever the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
Like a bit of VX gas.
God.
That's the end of it. No conflict.
Yes, it's a bit like nukes, I suppose. They're very indiscriminate.
Yeah.
You just wipe out the population in a very effective, efficient way, but it's not cool.
Oh yeah, it's horrendous.
Horrendous, and it's indiscriminate. So I don't think they'll ever be legalized.
No,
in any way.
But
then in a global fighting for your absolute critical survival, it's the end of your civilization, basically.
Well, in that scenario, then the Geneva Convention gets ignored completely, goes out the window. Probably.
Maybe.
If literally your very survival depends on, so there's some malevolent force in the world, whatever, just rises up.
Hitler Mark II.
Yeah. and is it's just undoubtedly just completely evil and just wants to take over everyone and enslave the world, chain everyone together and make them all work in the mines or something.
Sure.
I don't know. Forever. and that's their goal, and they're going to succeed unless you do this thing. You probably would
terrible
do it, right?
thing. Yeah, I really don't know.
It's like the bombing of Dresden or something. I mean, that was fucking horrendous.
Yeah, it was. But we still had rules though in World War II. You know, there were certain parts of the UK that weren't bombed. Oxford, for example, in World War II, because we agreed not to bomb certain parts of the German area, older kind
Maybe
of
it just didn't get bad enough. I mean, it got bad.
Well, it got bad for Hitler, and he didn't start bombing Oxford.
Yeah, that's true.
Mind you, there's not really a tactical advantage to bombing Oxford.
Yeah.
It's like, right, now we're going to bomb Oxford.
Right, fine, you pushed me far enough, I'm going to bomb Oxford.
Yeah.
And also maybe like that is just the last thing on his mind at that point, you know. Yeah, no tactical advantage to it, no real means to do it. Just struggling to defend himself at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you could engineer a scenario under which the only option left to you is to use something like this.
But
like this. I mean, like a chemical.
But
weapon.
a nuke's going to be probably more effective, right, than chemical or maybe not biological weapons. If you had a horrific virus, you're probably going to kill yourself, though.
Yeah, the virus is messier, isn't it? I mean, a nuke's pretty messy.
It's messy, but it doesn't keep getting transferred around the world,
and it's not microscopic and pernicious and hard to get rid of, and
exactly.
You know. Yeah, there's something pretty scary about like an engineered sort of super virus.
Yeah. You end up probably doing as much damage to yourself doing something like that, unless you are in a kind of air sealed bunker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine. What about like a zombie virus? You just create loads of it, like reanimates the dead, and then because you've got no army left, and then that's your army. It's like Game of Thrones.
It's like Game of Thrones, yeah. I mean, that could work to your advantage.
It could be bad though, because no one likes the zombie apocalypse. Yeah, I think it's unlikely that we'll ever legalize any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll ever. I think there's
we went through a phase of sort of discovering that it was all possible. Like, oh shit, if we mix these things together, we make this, which is horrendous. Oh, we mix these together, we make this. It's like 10 times more horrendous. And we just got to go through the process of discovering that all these sort of substances can be synthesized. Yeah, and it's like, right, let's put all them in a cupboard.
Yes.
And never use them.
Nobody
again.
Play with these again.
Yeah. Keep out of reach of children.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably where
I was actually watching a documentary recently about like a military research, a UK military research installation called Porton Down.
Yeah.
It's where they did a bunch of the chemical weapon like development, way back in the middle of the 20th century and stuff. And one of the things they do now is dispose. It's the only place I think in the UK where they can do this is dispose of like old chemical weapons.
Right.
So they've just got this like bunker there, which is just full of these like horrible like rusting.
Oh my god.
Old like sarin like gas and fucking horrible shit in there, mustard gas, like really old like rusted bombs that are just ready to, I don't know, just go off or whatever. They still have their explosive device in and everything.
What are they gonna? They just leave them in a bunker.
Yeah, well, they pile them up there until they get disposed of, and then they follow one of them through this disposal process and like how they actually have to do that and everything. And it's all done kind of remotely and robotically in this like underground.
That's cool.
Like disposal lab.
Nice.
Where everyone goes in their suits, basically like bunny suits, like full body positive pressure suits.
Yes.
Gets everything rigged up, and then everyone leaves the building completely, goes to the surface, goes to another building, and then watches via camera like this robotic saw like cutting the top off these bombs, and then you have the substance inside, usually a liquid and stuff. And you see it start to like sublimate or evaporate. Yeah. It's like, fucking hell, stay away from that place.
Not sublimate,
yeah. Anyway, so horrible stuff. And yeah, I think you're right. I don't think we'll ever see that making an appearance again. Probably not.
No. Right, so we've thought about the ground stuff. That kind of was sort of unrelated. But the weapons, how it might change on the ground, what might change on the ground.
Yeah.
But on the ground as well, we were more thinking about infantry, really, weren't we?
Yeah, I guess
kind of people down on foot, the weapons they might carry.
Yeah.
But obviously there's loads of tools and things, loads of technology that we're going to be using, vehicles basically, that's going to be changing in the near future.
Yeah.
And with, lots of advances. And we're going to talk about more far future kind of general trends at the end of this, for both these vehicles and infantry.
Yeah.
But I mean, so we go back again. things like tanks, just in recent years, really, there's not really any more big tank battles. There were some big tank battles back in the day.
Oh yeah, well, back in the Second World War and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, loads.
But nowadays, again, a tank's just a sitting target for some airborne type beast, Hellfire missile carrying helicopter or something like that. So those aren't really utilised anymore.
It's easy enough to take them out as they're slow moving, really. I mean, well, actually, some of them do move quite quickly, but they're big, they're easy to spot.
Yeah.
Even a couple of guys on the ground with the right equipment can take it out.
Exactly. So most of what we'll be using probably in the future to have on the ground will be kind of armoured personnel carriers or something around those. You know, not... I don't imagine... I mean, do they have many tanks in Iraq?
I think... No, I don't think so. I don't think there are... They did bring a few in 2003, but I'm not sure they really played much of a big role in anything.
Most of them are kind of these... I forget the names of the different variants of them. But yeah, armoured personnel carriers, essentially, to carry around people to go and clear out buildings and do whatever. Yeah. And then, like, construction vehicles. I don't think we're going to really have the big land-based kind of powerhouse, high stopping power, big defensive type vehicles that we used to have.
Carrying, like, large artillery and stuff.
Yes.
Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. Like, batteries of huge amounts of artillery blasting into a city. I mean, that doesn't... that's all airborne or...
Yeah, it's much more efficient, much more sort of rapid and accurate and stuff using an aircraft.
Exactly. So you don't imagine... Those sorts of things, I imagine, will be scaled back even more if that's possible. Yeah. To the point where they're not really relevant. Because most, you can get a tank, sure, but missiles in the future are going to be... You could take out a tank probably with a guy in the future who's got a big old rocket launcher, and it's just a sitting target basically.
Yeah, well, do that now. I mean, yeah,
exactly. So most of what I think would probably change then is going to be things related to aircraft.
Aircraft, yeah.
They're going to change quite a lot and become more important.
I mean, aircraft
they already are very important.
Yeah, aircraft have arguably been the biggest catalyst for changing warfare over the last sort of 80 years, maybe. Yes. Since the World Wars.
Sure. I mean, they played a big part.
I mean, apart from obviously the big scale like deterrents, like nukes. Yes. Yeah, they did play a big part in World War II, but the technology has obviously got a lot better since then. Yes. To now, we're at the point where, they are sort of the most important asset to the superpowers, to someone like the US or something, where like air power is sort of the most important part. Yeah, I mean, you still need troops on the ground to do anything. Yeah, really. Sure. But in terms of an asset to your army, they are them and lots of other reasons, obviously with technological reasons, but aircraft are kind of the main reason why you don't need to have like 10,000 men in a giant platoon and loads of tanks like going to attack a town. You can just have like small squads and some air support. Yes. And you're more effective than that 10,000 those 10,000 men. Yes. You get less of your people die, and you cause more damage. Yeah. And you're probably more particular about where you're firing. Yeah. More discriminate. Hopefully, that's the idea. I mean, there's still plenty. There's plenty of fuck ups, but I just mean instead of bombarding a town with artillery and tank fire, which is pretty inaccurate. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's just lobbing sort of explosive shells in a general direction, hoping that everything's going to be fine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the big changes that will be, I mean, we're seeing aircraft are on obviously continual cycles of development, especially jet fighters. Yeah. There's always a race in jet fighters to who can have the best air superiority aircraft, and it normally tends to be the US has led it for many years, and still does really with the Raptors. Still the F-22 still the kind of leading air-to-air fighter in the world, and they sell various air fighters to partners around the world. We're getting the F-35 Lightning, which is kind of a multi-role kind of fighter which will have a vertical takeoff thingy, which is cool. But in terms of big changes to these sorts of things, I mean the future aircraft they'll begin to look quite different
there's lots of talk about taking off the what's the middle tail, the thingy called?
The rudder? No.
I forget what it's called.
Yeah, I can't remember.
The tail fin, anyway.
Tail fin, yeah. Just
So,
call it a tail fin.
you end up with just a kind of, well, some of them already have it, like B-52s and
yeah,
stuff.
just like a flying wing.
Flying wing.
Yeah.
Flying wing designed for a lot of the sort of 6th generation aircraft. But what they're trying to build in actually are a lot of electronic countermeasures.
Right.
Because in a future warfare situation where you have air superiority, if you want to have total air superiority in the future, okay, or in the next generation of fighters, what's the best way to take out an F-22? It's probably to scramble the shit out of all its computers, or infect it with some sort of virus or whatever.
Sure.
So if there are those kinds of means of attacking and fighting fighter aircraft become suddenly way more important than they ever have been, because these things are so laden with computers to help them fly. The Eurofighter, I don't think it can even fly without computers.
No, it's just constantly making these tiny little adjustments to everything, which a human pilot couldn't just. There's no way they could do it. Yeah, without that, it wouldn't. I don't know if it wouldn't fly. It might literally not be able to fly without that, but it certainly wouldn't be anywhere near as like maneuverable or be able to do what it can do.
Sure.
With it.
And so you've got those types of developments, but you've also got the again, it's autonomy. How much time is there going to be left for human pilots to be flying around in jet fighters?
Well,
I mean, we already have drones flying around, and we recently had that story about an AI
beating pilots.
Yes.
Several pilots actually.
Yes. In a dogfight in the simulations. So a few generations down the line, you may well have aircraft that don't have a pilot at all, and it is just a pile of computers that flies around with a load of missiles.
Yeah.
And that's how you best build an air superiority fighter. It's a type of drone, essentially.
Yeah. Just a really advanced, high speed, very maneuverable drone.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And whether they are ultimately still human piloted by like the current like recon drones and stuff, or the Reaper drones, whether they have somebody sat in like a bunker in Nevada controlling them, or whether they are completely autonomous.
Well, maybe they could even go to the point where, because you'd imagine if you're identifying targets from the ground, you can make a lot of decisions without a pilot in the sky to do it for you. There's no reason
like moment to moment decisions, but targets and things would probably still come from a human.
That's what I mean. That's what I
of
mean.
Course,
yeah. But if you're
but say it's an engaging a dogfight.
Say there's you identify there's 10 enemy aircraft in this area, and you've got 2 of these like super advanced AI jets. You just like ping up all the targets on your radar
sort them out.
and just go like, you need to just
handle that,
sort those out, destroy those. You let them go out and come back, and then they've sorted it out. I could imagine that being a common thing in the future.
Yeah.
And then where do the advances come? It's going to be all. Then you've got to the arms race is then going to be kind of how do you destroy those autonomous, because it's going to be autonomous things fighting autonomous things for air superiority.
Yeah. So then it moves into the realm of sort of cyber attacks and attacking
if you can do that.
Yeah, if that's possible.
Yeah.
Which it might not be.
Yeah, it might be impossible.
But these things are going to be networked and centralized in some way.
Yeah.
So
probably
attack that. You forget about the actual objects flying around in the sky.
Yes.
And go to the network, go to the servers, go to, I don't know, whatever.
They might be so good they consistently always destroy each other.
Yeah.
They're just that good that the missiles are sort of the same range. They make the same decisions because they're just, even though they've got different systems, the obvious decision is to fire at this particular point and then do this particular thing.
Yeah.
So they always just end up killing each other.
Yeah. So at that point, there's just no point even trying. Just leave them on the ground. They're just pointless.
I don't know if that's quite going to happen. I'm sure there'll always be one that's slightly better than another.
Yeah.
Or a new type of missile or whatever. I mean, that's another thing that's going to change, right? Missile technology. These things are firing at each other. I mean, recently there's been a development of a ramjet powered.
Yeah, there is. It's actually already in use.
Yeah, the Meteor, is it called?
Yes.
I forget where it is.
I think it's the Meteor.
Yeah,
and ramjet. Yeah, that's essentially, in terms of technological advancement, it's just faster, right?
Yeah, and it's got a
longer range.
Yeah, it's just it's got a ramjet, which is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. It does sound very cool.
And it has that kind of if you look at the way it's built, it's got that vent at the front. It looks like you would imagine a future kind of ramjet powered missile to look in a way. It's very cool. So those types of things, those advancements in missile technology. Missiles are already super advanced anyway. There's so many computers in them.
Yeah.
So we're going to be seeing those sorts of changes. I imagine there's movement towards electronic warfare and the loss of pilots maybe in fighter planes. And for bombing runs as well, not just air to air.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I wonder about like high altitude, like recon, so it's like spy planes and stuff. I mean, currently most of that's done by UAVs as well.
That's true. I mean, because we used to have things like the Blackbird. Right?
Yeah, there is a successor for that being developed, but that's a UAV.
Exactly. I was about to say. Or the concept of it was a UAV anyway.
Yeah. So there's concepts. I don't know if it's actually being like literally being developed for use. So there are various concepts that have been taken to certain levels of completion with like a successor to the SR-72.
Right.
But there still seems to be like a niche for something that's not.
Was it SR-71?
Successor to the SR-71. It is the Lockheed one is the SR-72.
Yes,
that's the concept.
Sure.
Which it looks totally different. Sort of looks like I don't know, like sort of like an old school like stealth fighter.
It does look like. Yeah.
I mean, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it does. Anything that can fly
very fast.
I don't remember how fast it is, but it's like
Max 6.
Max 6. Yeah, it's some ridiculous amounts.
Yeah.
High speed.
High altitude, high speed. But then that begs the question. When don't satellites fill that role? I mean, not at the moment. Maybe they don't. Maybe there's like a gap between the sort of lower altitude predator drones and all that kind of stuff, and then the satellites. There's a gap in there that needs to be filled by these high speed. Kind of covert, high altitude.
Yeah, the gap that they've said is missing from the satellite stuff is you can't maneuver satellites into the position. You need them to be as quickly as you can send out a spy plane to fly there in a few hours.
That makes sense.
That's what people have talked about as still needing these types of high altitude, high speed reconnaissance aircraft.
Yeah.
Satellites have replaced a lot of that reconnaissance, but there are still some kind of moment-to-moment type things that you would want a high-speed aircraft for. So satellites, again, I mean, the other thing is, could you mount weapons on satellites? So for instead of... Actually, maybe that's a bad idea. Well, but upmass is not cheap.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It will be.
Is it really ever going to be cost-effective to be lobbing loads of missiles up into satellites? Like and we're not talking about highly expensive nuclear deterrence. We're talking
the kind of rockets you get.
The kind of rockets you fire thousands of in an Iraq war.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be cost-effective to be doing that.
Yeah, that's true. Unless you manufacture them up there, which is probably further away than.
Oh, that's true.
But that's sort of probably slightly more. Medium term to long term sort of future.
Yeah, quite a lot further into the future.
I mean, you can imagine a future certainly where it's cheap enough to have like orbital weapons platforms that you cover sort of a hemisphere or half a hemisphere with one of these things, and it's by relaying with other satellites, it can just target any location in its like umbrella view of the surface of the Earth really, really quickly and just drop off missiles.
But it probably can't react still as fast as having a military base nearby and some ridiculously fast aircraft that you scramble.
Yeah, so the way that we have it now where, like a squad on the ground will
laser
identify a target based on like satellite imagery or a high altitude drone.
Or they've seen stuff. They're like, there's a load of terrorists in here, bomb it.
Yeah. But even now you have that link between like guys on the ground, satellites in orbit, and then aircraft like coming over and striking.
Yeah.
So maybe that won't change. Like taking out the aircraft and you suddenly you have a satellite. All you're just going to do is wait longer for your strike. Basically, it's coming from further away.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, maybe they won't. Maybe jets won't be replaced by orbital weapon platforms.
They might. It just depends on how quickly you can get it down to firing those missiles and covering those distances.
Yeah.
A geostationary satellite that sits over one particular part of the Earth, if you had enough of them covering it, then you could see that. But then you've got a long travel time in geostationary orbit for the projectile.
Far
to make that distance.
It's like.
Whereas, if you had
30,000 kilometers? No, not quite that far. I can't remember the geostationary. orbit elevation is high. It's a
Yeah.
long way.
But if you've got a low altitude orbiting satellite, then you've got to maneuver it into position.
Yeah.
So that is problematic in the sense that you can't get the reaction times you want because you've got to move it around. So I think there'll probably be always a role for some kind of air breathing, military vehicles, as opposed to just all having
like rapid
space platforms.
Rapid response thing. I wonder if one day you'll have nuclear deterrence in orbit.
Possibly. That is more possible.
Yeah.
And that's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Is it any scarier than
having
terrifying nuclear submarine?
I mean,
Nuclear submarine.
they're all just ready. They're all just ready to go at a moment's notice, aren't they? That's kind of the point.
Yes, there's something about it being over your head.
Yeah, like don't drop it.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
We've deorbited it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to explicitly blow up, and you can avoid. If you just threw a nuke in a kind of a furnace, it wouldn't blow up like a nuclear bomb.
So like even if it fell from the satellite somehow, like deorbited, it wouldn't do anything.
Is that true? I think that's
you
true.
arm it. You have to arm it.
You have to. I think you have to run through a specific process.
Yeah.
Depends what type of nuclear bomb it is. I think. They have like okay, we're not going to go into the mechanics.
Yeah.
Of nuclear bomb.
Without actually reading about it, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
I'm pretty sure like just whacking a nuke hard enough isn't going to make it blow up.
Shoot it with a pistol.
Maybe heating it upward. I have no idea. I'm not even going to try to speculate.
No.
Who knows?
Yeah. So yes, I think that would be. I think planes will continue to be important and become more important.
Yes.
And become more automated and more kind of electronically focused. As in a lot of their, maybe not all of the adversaries, because things like fighting kind of ISIS type guys. Okay, you aren't going to be worrying about electronic countermeasures and really so much in those situations.
Sure.
But maybe 30, 40 years down the line you would be, because it's so easy to get
because that technology will be so much cheaper and more accessible.
Exactly. Yeah. Quite possible.
So the way that like AKs are now, so easy to get hold of.
Yeah, you can get some good hackers in.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah, but certainly they'll probably be pilotless.
Yeah.
Yeah, something kind of crazy about the thought of calling in your airstrike and it's just this like super fast, unmanned fighter jet that just comes screaming over the horizon. Just does its, does its strike and then heads off again.
Yeah, and they'd have
no pilot.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to worry about pilots for maneuvers or anything. It would just be as fast as you can, A to B.
Yeah, it would be a thing to behold. So the only other type of vehicle, not the only other vehicle in the world, but the other sort of main group of vehicles that you find in conflict, in war, are like ships.
Yeah.
And submarines.
Yeah, so we just talked about them changing quite dramatically, through the Second World War towards the end of it.
From these giant like battleships with tons of guns.
I think things like the Japanese were building those Yamato class battleships, which are absolutely massive.
Yeah, they're like floating
and
cities.
We're planning to build even bigger versions of them, but they lost to cruisers and smaller ships in the American fleet. Maybe not just because of that reason, but essentially that type of ship became the predominant kind of naval vessel. Smaller, not huge battleships and aircraft carriers.
Yeah, well, aircraft carriers are obviously like a huge asset.
Yeah,
and the ability to deploy these types of fighters that we've just been talking about from relatively close range. You need to be able to get them, because you can't fly those things from one side of the world to the other. You need to be able to get them close enough to where you want to deploy them. So those things are obviously fairly crucial. But yeah, like big scale battleships, because we don't have naval warfare in the same way like that anymore. No. Everything's much longer range. Aircraft play a much bigger role in it. In fact, when was the last time there was like a naval battle?
Like a proper showdown with ships. I actually don't know. Like Falklands, was there with showdowns with ships?
Yeah. I don't know if it was I mean, there were certainly ships involved, and there were like planes bombing ships that were.
I think they were. There was.
They were
some
actually.
I think so.
Proper naval.
I think some of the guns on the Argentinian ships had shorter ranges than the British ones, and they didn't go well for them.
Yeah, sure.
I think there was some naval conflicts.
Okay,
there,
I can believe that. Yeah.
But generally, not so much.
Yeah.
But they're still a hugely important military asset.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they are used
crucial
in theatres of war around the world to, like you say, deploy aircraft to strike at land and various things. So
yeah. Submarines as well. I mean, submarines are hugely important. I mean, for a start, they have our nuclear deterrence.
Yes.
Sort of always mobile, moving around.
Yeah.
And that's not the case for every country, obviously.
I think a lot of people have nuclear submarines of the nuclear powers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they maintain like you said, a deterrent purpose, and they also have anti-ship capabilities and reconnaissance capabilities and things. But how will ships change then, do you think? So in terms, we have missiles and planes, okay, already. So we have our long range stuff. I mean, people have talked about the guns. So ships still have guns.
Yeah.
Okay, they still have normal standard, guns, some big ship cannons, but they don't have the giant batteries of them they used to have. They might be replaced, right, with things like railguns, which are being developed. So that's
which are some serious shit.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about all this war stuff, right? Kind of as if it's really cool, and a lot of it is kind of horrible.
Well,
really,
war is obviously horrible.
Yeah, and a lot of like a railgun, right, is obviously what it's going to end up doing is probably not cool. Like in terms,
all of this stuff is designed to kill people,
and that's not cool.
Yeah, it's not cool.
But you cannot deny there is not something fundamentally cool, as in that kind of childlike, that's a cool piece of technology.
Yeah.
About like a jet fighter or a railgun.
Yeah.
A railgun it's just shooting a big bit of metal, like 20
slug of metal that just gets flung in a straight line for like 20 kilometers.
So it's sort of not cool and cool. Yeah.
What kind of speeds do they reach?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's like 3,000 meters per second or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, or higher.
It's like a big old slug of metal moving at that speed.
Yeah.
And you can find videos of these things being tested, and super high speed cameras, so you can see this, a target which could be sometimes like a truck, or several brick walls in a row or something like that, and this thing just cutting through them in slow motion, like they're just not even there, and just leaving behind it this like collapsing sort of vortex of destruction.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Just unloads a shitload of kinetic energy into a mass, and that's. It doesn't even have the railguns don't even have an explosive in them.
No.
It basically it works on the basis that it's flying so quickly. The kinetic energy delivered ends up being more energy delivered to the target than a shell full of explosives from flying at a slower speed. So you get a much longer range. You can use it to. I mean, they even talk about using it to shoot stuff out of the sky with. Because they're so the travel time is so short.
Yeah.
And being able to shell things from extremely long distances. So you might see,
and they're super cheap as well in comparison to, if you wanted to do is shell like a base or something on the shore from the sea. Yeah, they're cheaper than rockets, or they're cheaper than shells.
Yes, they're exactly. The slugs themselves, they're probably very carefully designed, but they are just lumps of metal at the end of it. They don't have explosives in them. Even if they're not cheaper, they're much easier to store on the ship. They take up less space. They're not as dangerous. If you get hit by some explosive device, like a torpedo or something, you don't have a bucket load of explosive shells on board with you that blow up as well. You just have a load of metal things that sort of fall over. Yeah. So, we might be seeing those in the relatively. I mean, they're already developing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've seen. I think there are very, very serious near-term plans to deploy them on ships and test them on ships.
Yeah.
Which is something that's just like totally science fiction.
It does seem like it, yeah. Even though the concept of it, like just chucking a lump of metal, feels almost a bit kind of old school. But obviously the way that it's done with these like electromagnetic accelerators and stuff is really sci-fi.
Yes.
And cool. How long is it until we have handheld railguns?
Well, they might have too much recoil.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, I imagine they probably do.
I don't really know though.
You get them in games.
You do get them in games, and coil. A Gauss gun.
Yeah.
A Gauss rifle, which is I think a Gauss rifle they have a slightly different arrangement of magnets. There's like a magnetic coil, I think, in a Gauss rifle, and a railgun has literally just magnetic rails. Yeah. I don't really know the exact difference. But yeah, those sorts of things I think we'll probably be seeing.
Yeah. And what we were just saying about finding these things cool, even despite the fact that what they're designed for is kind of horrific. check out some of the videos of these railguns. Like when you see this, the projectile exit the rails, and then it's covered in like this casing that then jettisons, and then it releases this like rifling, spiraling projectile. It's pretty cool.
And it's flying so fast. It's got like almost like a shockwave rolling off it.
Yeah.
It's pretty mental.
Yeah.
I don't know when the plans are to actually test these things out on ships, but I know it's not. I don't think it's far away from the stuff I've read before.
I remember this is total tangent, but there were these plans talked about a while ago, a couple of decades ago, several decades ago, about loading just essentially lumps of metal bars, I think, onto satellites and dropping them from orbit.
Yeah.
And they're not explosive, and obviously they're not very accurate, I suppose.
Just generating speed from that.
Just from gravity, just kinetic energy.
A similar
from gravity.
concept to a
very
railgun,
very
really.
similar concept, but without the accelerating electromagnets. You just drop them.
Yeah.
It seems so crude, but again, so much kinetic energy is unloaded.
They end
on
up
impact.
being.
It's literally like a meteorite just slamming into the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. So we might see these things. They're gonna like you said, they're cheaper. They're definitely cheaper than things like Tomahawk missiles and these sorts of things, which have longer ranges.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you can
slower but longer ranges,
yeah. But if you can, that's the thing with railguns. They're very hard to deflect the projectile. You can maybe shoot down a Tomahawk missile with something else, but you can't shoot down a railgun. And also, if you're in range to use a railgun, you maybe want to use that and say it's just you can just fire a lot more shots and whatever.
Yeah.
But a Tomahawk missile is probably more accurate. I don't know exactly.
It's like a rapid firing railgun.
Well, I think one of the problems with them at the moment is they degrade quite quickly. It's quite hard to keep because there's so much energy released as they blast that thing out the end.
Yeah.
The barrel gets degraded quite quickly.
Right.
So I don't know whether they're finding solutions for that, and they are going to be able to get to a point where, I mean, it probably takes a while to charge up all the magnets and things in it, but maybe you get to a point where it is very quickly firing, but it gets
a couple of rounds a second or something.
Hot.
Yeah, Christ.
Crazy hot.
I also wonder if you could employ something like that X-Acto bullet technology as
you
a
probably could.
sort of guidance technique for the railgun projectile.
It has to be, the projectile has to be machined very carefully, doesn't it, to withstand the forces. So if you had any kind of deforming points in it that change shape, it might go tits up. Yeah. Although it does have fins on it, so maybe, I don't know, there might be a way to do it. Yeah, there might be. But anyway, for getting railguns, I mean, ships, that those sorts of developments are going to be important, or they're going to be changes you'll see on ships. I think most of the big changes, though, are going to be things like, they're going to be so aircraft carriers are going to be carrying drones instead of aircraft. You're going to have a lot more kind of UAV. Again, we're talking autonomy type stuff.
Autonomy. I mean, the ships themselves will have smaller crews just because they'll be more autonomous, more automated.
Do you think you'll ever just have like a kind of drone ship that's run by drones, that repairs drones, it has no crew on it?
I mean,
like a mothership.
I don't see why not, because I reckon that will happen in other spheres, like shipping and things. It kind of makes sense. So in warfare, you have even the added reason of keeping people safe. Keep lowering casualties. If you can minimize the amount of people actually needed to be on board to the point where there's nobody on board.
Quite hard to repair. I mean, if we presume a future where machines can always do anything, then sure.
Yeah.
But it would seem in the near term that you would still need people on board to repair the drones.
Yeah, drone repair, maybe ship engineers and stuff as well. I was thinking maybe you could even have your like base of operations for your drone fleet on the ships, but maybe then that's too vulnerable, and you'd actually want it somewhere in a bunker somewhere in the middle of defended country. Yeah, sure. I don't know. Quite possibly. But yeah, I certainly think you can get to a point where you have much more automated ships. So yeah, I think that is going to be the big change again, is automation. Just keep coming back to automation. Yes. Yeah. I can't really see any other. Same with submarines. Yeah, same with submarines. Yeah. And there's something really kind of terrifying about like Navy submarines. I don't mean terrified. I don't mean like I'm scared of them. But do you know what I mean? Just these sort of giant windowless,
Oh yes.
Kind of
Yeah.
monolithic.
Yes. Oh yeah. They're definitely scary.
Yeah.
Something I imagine being really kind of rough, like I wouldn't want to do, is sort of go scuba diving underneath one that's at the surface. I think that'd be
or what
terrifying.
about above one that's submerged? That's kind of freaky as well.
That is. What do you mean? So so it's what in kind of.
Or just say you're swimming. I don't know why you would be, but swimming out in like the open ocean. Say you're like taking a boat out and you just go for a swim, and you snorkeling or something, and it's just you're ducking down into the blue, and then this giant like submarine just goes underneath
cruises
you.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen them, coming in and out. I used to live down the south coast in Plymouth, and there's a naval base there, and you see them occasionally coming in and out of some of the Trident subs coming in and out of Plymouth Sound, as well as just some other like naval submarines, and they're cool. They're cool
big
looking things.
bastards, yes.
Yeah, you don't really appreciate how big they are because so much of them stays submerged.
Yes.
You just see like the upper layer,
bridge,
and the conning tower, and stuff.
Whatever, yeah.
But yeah, they're cool.
They kind of they got that black, like you said, monolithic kind of look.
Yeah.
That,
and the thought about spending like weeks and weeks and weeks submerged on board one of those things.
Imagine what that's like.
Yeah, crazy.
Right.
Just living in this sort of strange metallic world.
Yeah, it must be bizarre.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, maybe people won't have to do that in the future because it will be autonomous and no one will have jobs. I mean, a nuclear submarine might be tiny. In comparison.
Just big enough for the missile. That's
big enough for the missile and the engine.
Yeah.
Or the nuclear reactor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which, you have to be very careful with those sorts of things. You want to have a nuclear reactor floating around in the ocean that's not properly looked after.
No, that's very true.
Yeah. So I think, kind of covering some of those areas of general kind of warfare, the big changes we're thinking about then mostly are autonomy, really.
Autonomy.
Generally, I mean, there's lots of technology, not just autonomy, but remote operation. So we talked about previously the kind of distance between conflicts widening, or the distance between engaging the opponents widening.
Yeah. Going from literally like punching people in the face.
Yeah. To shooting someone from 10 yards away with a crappy musket.
Yeah.
To sniping someone from 10 miles away, to controlling a drone from the other side of the world, and just playing a computer game. So that you would imagine that trend continues, and everything that's ranged, and you're taking people out of the equation when we're talking about obviously Western, not just Western, but developed country conflicts. We're not really talking. We're talking about the high end technology here. Yeah. And so. Yeah, you imagine that distance between the number of the people fighting and the enemy is going to continue to grow, and the people on the ground will continue to lessen.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even get to a point in the future where, in Syria at the moment, they kind of and Iraq, there's the Kurdish militants who are helping fight ISIS. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
In certain regions, and they're trying to deploy. They're saying no troops on the ground for the Western powers, and they deploy some sort of pockets of special, I don't know, like special forces or whatever to help the Turkish and the Kurdish fight ISIS. In the future, you could say no troops on the ground, but you just drop like an entire robot army. You just send in like a drone army, and say to the people, the people on the ground are kind of like regionally battling for ground. Say who you want, say the Kurds to beat ISIS or whatever. You just say to them, okay, we've got this entire like drone army. You just tell us what we need to do with it, sort of. Not quite like that, but you imagine,
Well, you're meaning like
instead of just airstrikes.
Right.
You don't instead of
like
just
robot
saying,
infantry and stuff as well.
Just not to say infantry, but just whatever, some sort of drone ship that turns up, and then it's like spraying loads of little drones out, and they all just go down and sort out whatever. Yeah. Maybe robot ground troops like Terminator.
Yeah, maybe. Or like the crappy droid army in Phantom Menace.
With the Gungans beat them.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually.
Wait, they didn't. No, they didn't.
Didn't they?
Well, they beat them for a bit, but then they got shut down because the ship at the top got blown up.
That's true. What a film.
Oh yeah, what a film. Imagine that, the drone army.
Yeah. All sort of like comic and a bit like dumb and like, making crappy jokes and stuff. I reckon those
destroyer droids are pretty good.
Yeah, actually, they were not bad.
Get them in. Bubble shields. But yes, not necessarily. I'm not really thinking, cause like seriously, there's going to be a giant robot army drop. It's going to be like Terminator.
But just sort of drones
increasing the capabilities of remote military operations to the point where it's analogous to almost having troops on the ground as well.
Yeah, well, we were talking about earlier having a fully autonomous sort of combat drone that is making all the decisions itself. So obviously, you might give it an objective, like clear this
compound,
take this compound, or something like that. But actually, the decisions about who it's going to kill, who it's going to take out, who it's not going to take out, all of that stuff, it does itself. In the same way that a self-driving car decides, when to stop, when to speed up, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just making all the decisions. So you just leave it to it. I can kind of imagine that happening when it gets to the point, as we were saying earlier, when it gets to the point where the machines are better at making those decisions than we are. Yes. And better at lessening collateral damage and
that makes it possible
efficient
to actually direct you won't have to micromanage a drone army if they were able to carry out those types of things on their own. It's not possible to micromanage an entire drone army that's fighting a war for you in a different country.
They need to be able to carry out their own decisions.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm imagining some kind of like weird, like quadcopter-y type thing, like beefed up with some weapons, just appearing in just like flying into some compound or some town where there's hostile enemies, but also civilians, and it just because it's using like a computer brain, it's able to process decisions way faster than a human brain would. It's got 360-degree views. It's communicating with satellites. It just has a complete awareness of its surroundings. It just immediately makes its decisions and then just like takes out all of the hostiles like immediately. They're all gone, and then it just leaves.
Have you ever seen the movie? Have you ever seen that movie Equilibrium? It's got Christian Bale.
Oh yeah.
And when
it's like a bit of a Matrix kind of rip off.
It's a slightly odd, like dystopian future where they're not allowed to have feelings or whatever. And he Christian Bale runs into a room, and the type of combat they have 2 pistols, and they just sort of go bam, 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 and he's killing them. And I'm imagining that as like a drone.
I'm imagining it. Well, yeah. I guess I kind of described it a bit like that.
Yeah, but I'm imagining it more like a little pod of whatever's that just go.
Yeah, sure.
Or little guns. Or
wouldn't necessarily have to be like one hench drone. Could be lots of like a swarm of small ones that in fact might be better.
Yeah, if you get all the gaps.
I mean, the ultimate goal, right, is to not have collateral damage. Like collateral damage.
Yes.
So the horrific tragedy of innocent people dying as a consequence of war.
Yeah.
We just need to minimize that, and obviously we take extraordinary steps now to try and minimize it as much as possible.
But you can't.
But it's we can't get rid of it completely. But the ultimate goal obviously would be to only kill your target, and that's it. So yeah, if you could have some kind of either like miniature drones or even like tiny like micro missiles that just embed themselves in the head of the of your target and detonate or something like that.
Yeah.
Just take them out just with no mess,
just go in with kind of sleepy darts and just put them all to sleep and then capture them and then interrogate them.
Yeah, they'll just wake up in a prison somewhere. Yeah.
But
that's the ultimate goal. So I don't know. I mean, whether we'll get there.
I mean, the other option is everything kind of moves to the cyber realm, in that most warfare that we have, like we have in terms of like physical autonomous armies, the best way to sort of fight against them might not be to try and counter them. The kind of terrorist type actions would not be to try and battle against them or. I mean, you still have probably people trying to blow bombs up in cities or whatever, but to cause damage to the structure of a military might be best, as we discussed earlier, to fight with sort of cyber warfare type things. And so that might be a big direction that warfare kind of goes in as well, is that the battle on the keyboard, basically.
Particularly if the hardware, if you have 2 powers fighting or potentially fighting that have similar hardware and similar similar capabilities in terms of their like software, like autonomy, decision making, AIs, and all that kind of stuff. We were talking about earlier, like 2 fighter jets who just reliably just shoot each other out of the sky every time, because they're both sort of equally good at doing it. Maybe the logical thing is then to attack your enemies, not just military networks, but just general like financial networks and various other aspects. As a whole, there, more and more we rely on large scale systems to run our countries, and everything from farming and agriculture to shipping and cities and all that stuff.
I mean, what happens if you could get say there is a large scale kind of AI network that's controlling a particular city? This is a kind of, I suppose, a more terrorist type action. But if you went in and changed the behavior of the AI without anyone knowing, and it just did something terrible.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a realistic
way to attack somewhere.
Yeah, it's a realistic concern soon.
Yeah.
If not already. I mean, obviously we don't have like smart cities yet, really. No. Certainly you can imagine a cyber attack now that would be pretty bad. I don't know if it would like directly cause those people to die, obviously, but could still be pretty devastating for a country. Yeah,
you could hack into some power plant or whatever and destroy some infrastructure that way by overheating it, or I don't know. The more everything gets networked, the more vulnerable it is to those types of things, and the more important cybersecurity becomes. Yeah. And the more important the defense of a country becomes, actually based on good cybersecurity as opposed to defending your borders traditionally.
Yeah. You wonder if two countries at war, one of them develops the capability of hacking the other one's sort of some fundamental network and just momentarily shuts down all the power stations in the whole country.
Yeah.
Just for like a minute, and then turns them back on again and says like, yeah, that was us.
Yeah. Don't move.
Surrender. Yeah. It's like the equivalent of like a cyber nuke.
Yes.
Just dropping that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Kind of a threat. Yeah. Interesting. Who knows? Do you think? So the only other big change I could imagine in this, what is it, near term? Maybe it's not that near term.
Semi-near term.
Space.
Okay.
So we talked about satellites and things being involved.
Yeah.
But as we colonize the solar system, if we do, which we probably will.
Yeah. Let's get out there.
There could be a whole like new theatre developed for warfare. So kind of like desert warfare, ocean warfare, air-to-air, etc., but space war, as in literal space conflicts. So where it's space fighting vessels fighting space vessels, like that's proper sci-fi. That's proper sci-fi.
Yeah. Well,
this is not really near-term future then.
Not
this
really.
It's not unrealistic that we're going to colonize the solar system in the next 100, 200 years.
No, but you wouldn't need the solar system necessarily colonized for it to be.
That's true.
So say there was heavy industry going on in space, like asteroid mining.
Oh, they have like mercenaries
and it's all nationalized.
Yeah.
So it's not international cooperatives, which it may well be, but rather it's like national interests.
Yeah. Maybe
there will be a reason to like arm your mining stations or have them protected in some way, because you don't want some other country to kind of swoop in, or some other maybe some other company to swoop in and take your resources. I mean, the solar system's a big place. There's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah.
So,
but people might try and nationalize certain parts of.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking. I know China.
I know they're not supposed to, but
China have announced plans to build like a moon base. Right?
Sure. And
their space agency is military. So you'll effectively have a Chinese military installation on the moon.
Is there some... Okay, I don't know anything about legality or legal barriers to people setting up national... Like in the Antarctic, you can't do that anymore.
There's the Outer Space Treaty.
Yeah, but have they signed it?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know, and I also don't know what's in the Outer Space Treaty, so basically it's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that I know you're not allowed to set nukes off in space. But in terms of actual weaponry, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm more thinking land claims.
Land claims, yeah, I think you're not allowed to claim.
I'm not sure you are either.
No. But the thing is, once access space is cheap and everyone's getting up into space all the time,
there must be some sort of conflict, maybe.
Well, yeah, and these laws are going to have to be revised probably, or reviewed
true.
At least, and they're fine for right now.
Yeah.
But once everyone's up there looking for resources and people are emigrating to Mars and stuff.
Who knows? I mean, this is quite far future stuff, really, and it's
Yeah.
it's getting to the point where you're just making stuff up, it's just imaginary kind of.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. But then you imagine,
I mean us.
Yeah. I'm not pretending any.
To discuss those things, you have to just kind of,
Yeah, it goes from like guided, speculation into just realms of.
I don't know, fucking spaceships fighting an astronaut, Moonraker style, or whatever. Yeah.
Oh God, I can't see that happening.
No, terrible.
Well, I don't know. I still think there's a plausible. So even if you have like a colony on Mars or something, and it and you have millions of people living there, it could be a reason for it to fight a civil war with itself, or decide that it wants to become independent from Earth or something, and there might be some kind of conflict. But in terms of actual like a new theatre of war. And of actual combat in space.
Yeah. They develop specific space-faring, weapons platforms and stuff.
Yeah. Like armed spacecraft.
Yeah, like new concepts.
Warships in space.
Yeah, exactly. Or like aircraft carrier type things. There's lots of little ships. Just whatever. Or drones or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of cool. It's kind of like it's like science fiction, but
who knows?
No, who knows?
But so that's not that's kind of separate, but I think we've kind of outlined roughly what we think near term to medium term type changes will be in terms of autonomy, in terms of cyber warfare, and then maybe creeping into a bit of space warfare at some point.
But ultimately, I think we've already summed it up. See the trend of fewer people involved, more machines, more distanced, hopefully less collateral damage.
Hopefully that's the goal. I suppose the goal is to have no wars, but in a when we're talking near term, medium term, I think you probably will always have wars in that time frame. And consequently, if you are going to always have wars, then you're probably just going to have to do your best to. You don't want to kill anyone you shouldn't, because that's the absolute worst thing.
Yeah.
So we think we're going to carry on talking about this next week, right?
Yes.
I
think the original plan was to try and pack all
of
it
we just keep running episode, along.
We're going to talk about the far future.
Yeah.
Next week.
All sorts of even more mad shit.
Yeah. So we want to explore this question of whether we will ever stop fighting.
Yeah. Will war ever finish?
Yeah.
War is over, John Lennon style.
At least with ourselves.
Yeah, well, that's another thing we might talk about.
So how will we react to hostile alien contact?
Oh my God.
That's going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be mental.
Just a Geneva Convention matter.
Yeah, exactly, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And how does superintelligence fit into all of this?
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun episode.
I think there's good stuff in there. A lot of mad stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
It's going to be good. All right.
Cool. So I think that's the end of the main topic.
It is for today. So, just to round off, Nutters of the Week.
Oh, yeah.
This one is UFO based.
Excellent.
So Nutters, is that fair? This one is less like laugh out loud hilarious and more just like quite curious and weird. But
I like it. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of strange and just a bit of like a strange incident. So basically, I just stumbled across this. I think it's because we've been doing this for a while. The Nutters of the Week. My phone started like recommending stories to me.
Oh God. Oh
it's
no.
quite useful. It's good.
Well, yeah, it's doing the research for you.
So I just sort of stumbled across it. But basically, I'd never heard about this before. There was this incident in I can't know how to pronounce it. This place called Ruwa, maybe.
Ruwa.
Ruwa.
Where's that?
It's a small town in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And this is in 1994, so 24 years ago.
Right.
Basically, what happened was a bunch of school children were it was broad daylight at school, and then I think there were like 62 actually, 62 school children out playing at lunchtime. They were being supervised by one teacher.
Right.
While they were all out playing, they all saw something, and what they saw was a craft land in the woods near the school, and some humanoids come out of the craft.
Helicopter?
And that's not how it was described.
Okay.
And come over to them. Short humanoids that are very well described. Come over to them. A few of the children describe being communicated to by these humanoids in terms of like telepathic images like flashing in front of their eyes. And the descriptions I was looking at were quite like vivid. They were saying like really describing this like this sequence of thousands of images like flashing in front of their eyes about like technology and stuff and all this weird stuff.
Right.
These are, I think, the age of these kids are
how many of
10,
them? How
like
many?
8 to 12, I think, are the ages of the kids.
How many of them were saying they had this delusion?
62.
All of them had the same delusion.
All of them had saw this thing, reported seeing this thing.
No, I mean the flashing of technology or what?
Oh, sorry. Not more than maybe like 5 or 6.
Right.
But all of them saw the thing land and saw the things come out and all that, and they all drew pictures of it afterwards. So all of their descriptions of it converged on the same thing, very roughly the same thing, like a disc-shaped thing with these glowing lights around the edges and all this stuff, and these short black humanoids with these massive eyes and wearing like wetsuit type stuff, apparently. And then
that is weird. But
it's weird. I mean, you know, whatever. So their stories will converge. They all drew pictures that looked kind of a bit similar.
Yeah.
And they had like some psychologist come in who actually sort of, I think he trashed his reputation somewhat because he came into that going, this is a mass delusion.
Yes. And
came out of it saying, these kids are all telling the truth. Not as in saying, I believe in UFOs or whatever, but saying...
they believe what they've seen.
These kids are not lying to me.
Okay.
And he was kind of a bit slammed for it, I think, for a long time. But then 20 years later, they re-interviewed all these kids. And apparently in a lot of the like mass delusion cases, it's really common for at least a large percentage of the people as they get older to admit that it was, or to realise that it wasn't true.
Sure.
But all 62 of these kids 20 years later all recall it exactly the same as they did then.
Right.
So it's all a bit like, what's going on?
Well, that is odd.
I mean, that's it. That's the end of it. It's just a weird. Yes. It's just a weird little story. And of course, like what it boils down to, the logical explanation is yes, it's some kind of very strange sort of mass delusion. I mean, it must be. They probably did see something. Maybe it was like a man who was like shorter than people usually are, so he looked a bit sort of a bit strange
in
some kind of vehicle. So there's more to this, right?
Right.
If you read like another article, there's more to it.
This is cool. It's freaky.
Yeah. Apparently, a few days before. So this is the other thing, is that stuff like UFO sightings and things like that were just not in the like pop culture or anything in Zimbabwe at this time at all.
Oh, right.
It wasn't like in the public consciousness.
Sure.
Except a few days before that, there was a weird sighting in the sky. Thousands of people saw it above Zimbabwe, and it's on the news and all this stuff. Which is probably, I mean, who knows what it could have been, like a fireball or like some meteorite or something, or whatever. But it was in the news, and like it could have been sparking sort of news stories about like like speculating, like in America they've had all these weird sightings, you know, New Mexico and stuff.
Sure.
And
so it's potentially priming
kids to
something.
Yeah, and kids just convince each other of things.
Did you said one adult was with them?
There was one adult out there supervising, but they didn't see anything.
Right.
And of course, there's no physical evidence of anything. So there's no like, you can't go out into the woods now by the school playground and find like, you know, the imprints of the landing legs of a craft. There's nothing there. There's no physical evidence at all of anything. Nobody except the children saw anything.
Yeah, and that's just not good enough evidence, is it, to be convinced?
Of course not. No. So it probably is some kind of mass delusion. But
so,
it's really strong. It's like really rooted itself in these kids' minds.
Yes.
And like some of the parents of the kids apparently been interviewed, and they've said that, you know, ever since then their kid has been different, and they've never talked about anything. You know, they've constantly just been talking about it forever. Like it's just been a really significant like event for their kid.
I'd love to know what happened.
It's really strange, isn't it?
I'd love to go back and watch that, because I would go. Presumably, you would go back and there's something, that something that happens that's not what they're describing exactly. I would guess is what you could go back and watch it. But it'd be so interesting to watch them kind of form the story and just see what it was that triggered that.
Yeah.
Like why to convince that they're really convinced that something, and if it was something that landed and it was. I mean, the other option is they are not lying, and it is something really weird, and I want to see it because it's weird.
Yeah. There was some kind of extraterrestrial encounter, like an actual legit one. I'd probably swing towards no on that.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't rule it out, I guess.
A big load of kids is.
It's not the most reliable of sources, is it?
No, I mean they're prone to make up imaginary stories, have imaginary friends, and do all sorts of things, but.
One of the warning lights is so you guys can't see this, but this is one of the drawings, right?
Okay, yeah, everyone can't see this. Okay, oh right.
And it's like literally you ask like any kid in the world ever draw a UFO, and they're going to draw that.
Yes.
So one of the warning signs is that they had this event a few days before, and you can imagine on TV they might have like played clips from some films and stuff, just like some weird like speculation on the news. You get some kind of stuff like that happening. I'm like, oh, what if it's this? On the TV, and that's kind of crept its way into the kids' minds.
Sure.
And they're all drawing, stuff a bit like that.
Let's have a look.
Like various, like there's only sort of.
Oh, they're very. They do. I mean, they look kind of like the grey type alien thing. That one. Yeah. There. These all look like classic kind of Roswell type UFOs, really.
So they are things that are in
human culture.
Sort of human culture. The images that are in human culture. So
maybe the most hilarious prank someone pulled. Just scare the shit out of some kids.
But of course, so I only spent like sort of 15 minutes or something reading about this earlier today, just because it was kind of interesting, and I found a video from like a UFO conference, and of course, like this is I think considered to be people who are really into UFOs. This is considered to be pretty important. Right. Pretty hard to refute and stuff.
What was the video? Oh, the video was.
The video was just like a conference with one of the kids from this event talking, and some like UFO expert talking really seriously about like the telepathy bits and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, but you can tell that like it was really taken very seriously.
It does seem slightly mean to just sort of have a bunch of kids and just say to. There's the rational explanation that the most likely thing that's happened there is not that an alien landed and they interacted with it and they had telepathic conversations with it. That's not the most likely thing that happened. But it does seem just these kids are like earnestly telling you that they saw this thing and they're trying to describe it to you as best they can. You're just like, you're all having a mass delusion, which is possibly true. But I just gotta feel like, oh, poor kids. Do you know what I mean? It's not that they're like intentionally lying.
Yeah. But there's something happened. Something must have happened to trigger it. Yes. Like 62 kids don't just randomly have a mass delusion, do they?
I think they have. I think there were recordings of it. Remember, there was that school that thought there was a bunch of demons and stuff in the school, and they went mental.
Oh yeah.
And then it was all fine.
I was actually there was a Reddit post about this, and there were people underneath it talking about like, oh yeah, when I was in school, the lights went out in an assembly. And by the time the assembly ended like 20 minutes later, the lights went out for like 30 seconds or something. Everyone in the room, all the kids in the room, were convinced they'd seen like a ghost or something fly across the room.
Oh, I've been on a school trip where that's happened, sort of, where we went to this place.
But like someone starts talking about it and it passes through the room and like everyone's like, oh yeah, I definitely saw it. It looked like this. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. So we were in a dorm with, I don't know, there was probably about 15 kids in there on bunk beds. Okay. Like proper stacked up in there. We were all out there were teachers and whatnot, and we were out for like a couple of days. You do it in a particular year in primary school, and it's like a kind of a big event. You go out to this place in the local kind of. It was a little bit far away, like half an hour drive away or something from the school, or maybe an hour drive away. Stay there and do some outdoor activities, and it's like a really big like fun thing. And at night, obviously, everyone's in the same room, and you're just a bunch of kids, so you just come up with all this bullshit and just go a bit mad. And there's a few kids that are like really into ghosts, and they were talking about that they saw a red-eyed ghost outside, in the bushes, And I remember people starting to latch onto it. People would be, oh yeah, I've seen it as well. Yeah, in the bushes outside.
Weird.
And it's just it was obvious. There was nothing there. There was nothing. I was sat, and I at the time, as a kid, you start kind of going along with it. Oh, you're sort of getting a bit worried and stuff. And oh shit, like what's going on?
Yeah.
And some girls in the girls' dorm were like crying and stuff because they thought they had seen the same thing. And it was like there was literally nothing there.
Yeah.
I can remember looking back and looking out the window with all of them. And they're like pointing, there's something in there or whatever. And there was nothing. There was.
Bizarre.
I remember looking at it and seeing nothing there, but still being like, oh, maybe there was something.
Yeah, that's really weird.
You can imagine some.
I think I've had. That's quite a familiar.
Yeah.
I can kind of sympathise. I can almost picture how that can happen.
Yes.
So I can't think of an exact example from my childhood, but I
just,
think similar things must have happened.
Very distinctly, a red-eyed ghost, like
ghost.
a type of ghost,
It's like a Scooby-Doo character.
Yeah, exactly. and you can imagine in a culture where superstition is much more at the forefront of your everyday life, that manifests itself in much more extreme cases of fear and hallucination. Not hallucination in that sense, but kind of a convincing of yourself.
That
something is there that's not.
Yeah. So I just think that there must have been something that happened, like even just like somebody in a weird suit. I don't know, like top of my head, like a beekeeping suit, just like wandered out of the forest, like, oh, this is a school,
and a helicopter had flown over or something.
Yeah, and like 2 days before, that stuff about UFOs had been on the news. Yeah, and all the kids are like, we saw a UFO, holy shit.
Yes.
And that's changed the rest of their lives, that they've kind of convinced themselves.
That's why I'd love to go back and see what that was.
Yeah.
In the same way I'd love to go back to that night at school, wherever it was, in the little hostel place, and see what it was that everyone was freaking out about. Obviously there was nothing there. Yeah. It was just a bush.
Yeah.
But it's strange, yeah.
Weird phenomena.
Yeah, it's very odd. Yeah, right, anyway, that's an interesting that was the week. Very interesting. I like those sorts of stories. There is something
interesting.
There is still something that gets me excited and interested by it, because it's just a little bit of mystery, a little bit odd.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I suspect there's a fairly mundane rational explanation, but knowing what that is still interesting to me. It's still mysterious.
That little seed that then sparked that. Yeah. It's weird. Anyway, that's it for tonight.
That's
today,
the end of
this
the
week.
show. That's it. Next week we're probably going to do a bit more on this war stuff we mentioned earlier.
Yep.
So thank you all for listening, as ever.
Keep in touch.
Putting up with our shit.
Spread the word if you like it.
Yeah, if you like to talk about absolute nonsense, or and feel free to ask us questions or if you want our opinions and stuff.
We like interactive. If you send us comments and questions, we'll occasionally answer them on videos and stuff. We like doing that. It's fun. So keep that coming.
Cool. All right.
See you next time.
See you later.